Welcome to a special bonus episode of the Paul Ryder Tapes. This episode features an extended interview with Monday's drummer Gaz Whelan, who was one of Paul's very best friends. Oh, hang on, I need to put it so that the person speaking is full screen. How do I do that? View.
Old people, eh?
Here we go. That's it. I can see your full screen now. I'm going to make it bigger. So I can't remember how much I've told you about this.
Not much really.
Not much. All right. Okay. So basically, at the beginning of the year, we talked about it more than a year ago. But basically, I was doing this podcast about online dating, and I played the first episode to Paul because he's it kind of I talk about him in it, obviously. Yeah. And he thought it was really good. He's like, oh, really? Oh, yeah. And I said, well, why don't we do a podcast? And because, he kept going on about writing a book. And I knew that it would never get finished. So we started in January and he was really into it. Like he'd come over religiously every Sunday.
Really?
And we'd talk and we recorded it. I can't explain it really, but there was, on both our sides, there was this urgency to get it done before he went to England. Got to get it done, got to get it finished, got to get that podcast finished. Like, we could have finished it any time, but he kept coming. And he lives 2.5 hours drive away. Like, it was a mission to drive over here and do these recording sessions. And sometimes he couldn't do more than half an hour because it really took it out of him. It was like, he said it was like therapy. Anyway, we finally finished it 12 days before he died. Like, how insane is that? And it's really weird because when I got the call, the first thing I said to Amelia was, I knew it. It's like I knew.
Yeah, well, I had a feeling that night I went to bed and said to my mum, just phone Linda, see how Paul is, because I've got a bad feeling about this. This was midnight, and then she got back. She said, oh, Linda said she checked on him, he's snoring, so he's still alive at midnight. And I was like, all right, okay. But I just didn't have a good feeling. And then when they phoned me in the morning, I was like, I know. I wasn't surprised.
Yeah. And then what we'd planned to do was, once we'd finished recording everything, which we'd done, we were going to have people like you, and he was going to talk to you, and we were going to include people that he talks about. So now, doing it, but he's not going to be here. But I can look of everybody that he talks about, you probably pop up the most in terms of references and Gaz said this, Gaz said that. So I've done a list of things that he talks about, and it'd just be nice to get your take on those things too. Some of them are funny stuff, and some of them is the darker stuff. But all of it, there's nothing that he's hiding or trying to bury under the carpet. And I think he just really wanted to spill it all out. It was really cathartic in a way.
Let's start with the darker stuff because then it's easier.
Well, you tell me when things started to go wrong, what the first sign of everything going bad was.
What, with the band?
No, with Paul.
With Paul. Yeah. I think for me, what I noticed was probably the Alison thing, the Alison affair when he broke up with Alison, and we were in rehearsals once in Cheetah Mill, and I went in and he was doing heroin, and I just went, what are you doing? And as soon as he said, and he went, I know. As soon as he did that, I remember walking out, and that was, I can't remember when that was. I remember thinking, this is the beginning of the end. I remember that distinctly. He was in the kitchen, the rehearsal room in Cheetah Mill. So
he wasn't hiding it. He was doing it in front of everybody.
Well, he kind of went into the back room, but he wasn't hiding it. You could walk into the back room. He was just there. He wasn't he wasn't hiding it. No, that was the first time I'd ever saw him do it.
Yeah. And what did it make you feel?
I just knew it was it. I thought, that's it. Because I knew, because Paul's like me in that kind of way. And I love downers being a stress and anxiety like Paul's. And I thought, that's it. He's not coming back from that. And I thought, that's the end of the band, because he was always a driving force in the band. And once he was doing that, you know what I mean? And also, from a selfish point of view, I had no ally anymore,
Right. And you felt like you needed an ally.
Well, I always haven't I? Like we always work. It's just like me and Paul also always ever say anything.
Yeah.
And with Shaun doing that, we kind of held it together. And as soon as he did that, I thought, well, we're screwed.
Were you angry with Shaun because that's obviously where he got it from in the first place?
Yeah, I was at first actually. Then afterwards, I was angry at Paul, but I was angry. Well, I don't know whether he got it from him, but I presumed, So yeah, that was my initial reaction. Was yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Okay. And then he talks in a lot of detail about his breakdown and going into Meadowbrook, and he said that you visited him every day. You were like the one person that really stuck by him through that. What was that like?
Well, I'd just had a breakdown after I'd come back from Ghana. I was halfway through a joint, and the next thing I was in the fish pond in my boxer shorts, and it was hailstoning. And the doctor said he wanted to section me, but my mum and me talked him out of it. Turned out it was the malaria tablets I'd taken, these Larian that got banned later.
Wow.
But it took me a while, and I was bad for a few months. So then Paul got sectioned, I was like, just coming out of it. So it's kind of a bit of therapy for myself as well. But I used to go every day and see him. It was just really funny because he used to sit there in a room full of smoke. So he loved it because he was smoking. But he used to tell me about all the different characters and who they thought they were and all that. And we used to have a good laugh. He used to stay for a couple of hours. And it was kind of cathartic for me as well.
Yeah. Did you feel like he was going to get better, or were you worried he wouldn't come out of it?
I was worried he wouldn't come out of it. Yeah, because you don't know mental health, do you? And I didn't know then. We was younger, still in our 20s. I didn't think he was going to come out of it.
So how was he behaving? What was the behaviour like that was weird?
He wasn't that weird. He just looked. He wasn't in himself when we got talking to him. He was fine. He was himself, but he was shaking a lot, and he seemed like he just seemed really scared. Like he had shell shock. He was really scared. It's like he was in a trench and he didn't want to go over the top. Honestly, he just seemed really scared all the time. Really, really anxious every day, and that didn't seem to get much better.
And what did he look like?
Do you know what? It's weird because what did he look like? He had days where he looked like he was in a psychiatric ward. His beard had grown out, smoking, his eyes weren't there. The textbook symptoms, but then we got talking about stuff. The thing about him is, as you know, amazing memory for things, remembers all sorts of things. And when you go back in the past and his kind of eyes lit up, so he can remembers everything, really strange thing. Like you'd say it's something, just something benign, and off the cuff something in 1983. And when you said that, and you're like, what? You remembered things like that, which is really bizarre.
Yeah.
So, it's like he kind of always, you know what? I got the impression, and it kind of hurt him more than me. And it was a bit with me, but it hurt him more, I could tell, that we knew we'd lost something that we had special as a band, and we was kind of looking back at the good times and kind of reliving them like an old rocker. And I could see that. I could see it really, really ripped him from the inside. I'd kind of had me, but, he took it a lot harder. It was his band.
Yeah. Tell me a bit about the Monday Head thing, because he said that everyone called him Monday Head.
There was a thing in the Beatles where they used to say, where they talk in the Beatles, and it's John Lennon and Ringo, they're going on about McCartney. In every band, there's always someone who's obsessive and drives a band, and you need them. Everyone else in the band, they hate because they do that anyway, but you need them or you never get anything done. And they're talking about, and Ringo was saying, yeah, we'd be sat in the garden in the summer in Surrey, and the phone would go, and we'd both look at each other and go, same minute, it's McCartney. And George Harrison says, yeah, Monday, Beetlehead.
Beetlehead.
So I used to call him Monday Head because he was obsessive. I mean, when we first started, we used to rehearse once a week, and I kind of saw it as a hobby. And for the first few years, because I was younger then, I never took it serious. And there was one night I didn't even bother going to rehearsals. I thought, I'm not going. I was going down to the pub, and he literally kidnapped me on the street. I was walking down the street. It's just for a rehearsal. I was halfway down to Swindon to the pub, and he literally pulled up in his car and dragged me in the car. Said, "You've got rehearsals." You know what I mean? So he was upset. But yeah, he did all the cassettes, he did all the posters, he did everything. It was his band. And I think that's when the fame thing happened and it all turned to Shaun, and he lost that kind of power's the wrong word, because it wasn't a power thing with him. Power's the wrong word, but that kind of being in charge and being in control. And he was also very, very good at not doing anything cheesy or corny. He's a good teacher for that, and I've learned a lot since that about never-ending songs with and all that, and all it, and you know what I mean, and fitting certain ways, and never doing all that, and all these kind of cliche endings that musicians do. All bands do them still, even the coolest bands do them. So he was, and once they kind of And also not really getting the credit for driving us to that point, which he did, you know, and the music, you know, and other people getting credit for stuff he'd done and telling his story. And I think that hit him a lot harder. I mean, it really pissed me off, but I kind of just accepted it and kind of gone with it. Well, I kind of didn't, but it hurt him 10 times more than it hurt me.
Yeah. Do you feel like Shaun never really gave him credit for his?
Yeah, Shaun never gave me a credit. No, I don't think so. No. Well, I've never heard it. I mean, maybe he might have done on the quiet, but I've never heard him in the press give anyone credit. No.
Yeah. Do you find it hard to believe that they're actually brothers, given that they're so different?
No, they are different, but they're also very similar. It's like me and Paul are very, very different, but really similar. I mean, you know, literally, I know that this sounds really cheesy and cliche, but we could almost read each other's minds. We'd finish each other's sentences, and I'd know what he was thinking. He'd know what I was thinking. We'd say things to each other, burst out laughing. So, I know this sounds really cliche, and it sounds, you know, because he's gone now and all that. But he was like a brother to me. He was like an older. I have an older brother, and older sister. So he was like an older brother to me. He really was.
Yeah.
And yes and no. But they're so different, so different, but similar in a lot of ways as well. But yeah, so different. They're very, well, as you know, completely different experience, both of them.
Yeah.
So, I just really don't know. It's a shame, isn't it?
I actually asked Paul the question. This put shivers down my
spine.
spine. I asked Paul the question. No, I said to him, "How do you think Shaun would feel if he got a phone call saying that you were dead?" Can you believe I asked him that?
What did he say?
And he said, I don't know. I was like, no, go on, go there. How do you think he'd feel? And he said, I really can't say. I really don't know. And I said, well, how would you feel if you got a call saying he was dead? And he said, oh, I'd be sad. And I said, why? Well, because I'd lost my brother. And I said, well, what would that mean to you? And he said, well, it would mean that we hadn't made up. So it was just like, whoa. Very much the sentiment of him was that he was sad that they weren't friends. Like there was still love there for his brother, despite the fact that he absolutely disliked him and disliked his behaviour and the narcissistic side of things. But there was an emptiness and a sadness there, and it kind of ruined his life. I think it really dominated his psyche for all of those years.
It definitely did. I remember lots of moments I used to say that to him. And I remember once just recently, I don't know why this springs to mind, but we sat outside at Greg's at a service station in Staffordshire somewhere on the way to a gig. He was getting really stressed. And he was because of the Shaun thing, and Shaun had said something in the press and he got really upset and all that. And he was popping pills and smoking. He could see it was really bothering him. And I said to him, I said, I know it's not for me to say it. I'm an idiot to say, but you're giving if it's bothering you that much, you're giving him the power.
Yeah.
And you know, and I know he said, but you know what, with younger brothers, as you know, they're always seeking, like everyone does with the parents, whether they want to or not subconsciously, they're always seeking the approval of their older brother and the parents, even when we don't like our parents, or you just always are. And I think there was always that, and it was really weird. It's because I remember using the analogy with when we lived in Australia. Australians really hated the English, but there was always that. They're always after the kind of. Those after how Britain sees them, you know, like they're always after it, like with bands. What does the British press think? Even though they hate, you know, and it was kind of weird because he was always after Shaun's approval. Yeah, definitely. And he wanted to be friends again. I could see that. Did Shaun want to be friends again with him? I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not sure.
No,
I think I just don't think. I don't know whether it's an age thing or that, but I just don't think Shaun wanted the hassle or the. And I think that's an older brother thing as well. You get a lot of older brothers with younger brothers who just want to sort things out. The other ones just don't care. You know, not interested.
Yeah.
You know, that's so I don't know why, but I got the feeling that he didn't want to, but Paul did.
And you remember when you were very first approached to play the drums in the band? Can you remember like the very first idea of it and who asked you and what happened?
It was Bev Lomax in my class at school, and her older sister was just getting married to Shaun. And then Nigel Day came up to me, who was in another class, and said, oh, my brother Mark's in the band. And they both took the rehearsal at the same place. I didn't think they were the same band because of, you know, completely different people. That was the first time I got asked. And they both came to my house separately. And I thought, oh, Mark's band will be a heavy metal band. I don't want to get involved in all that. And then I remember when I turned up at the first rehearsal, I was still at school. And Mark was there. And I walked in and saw Shaun and Paul, and Mark was there. I'm like, oh, it's the same band. And Paul was very, very quiet, very quiet. And Shaun took me to Hannett for a drink after that, talking and all that. But I was intrigued by Paul because Shaun, I was a bit loud like Shaun, not, and then he tried to get me drunk. I was like, I've got school in the morning. He'll try to have a whiskey, you'll be all right. And Hannah's put Coronation Street on tape and said, have a drink. I've got school. Anyway, I got off. And the next rehearsals, I was just gravitated towards Paul Horse, and we just hit it off straight away. We fell in love straight away. We just straight away, we got on. I think we had a handful of, I can't remember how many arguments we had over the years, maybe 2-3 arguments. That was after we'd split up. Yeah. And we both, I was drinking too much and he was doing too much. I don't think we ever really, we never fell out, not properly. No. Not during the band times. After the band times, we did, and other people got involved and it got a bit silly, but no, never during the band.
I mean, I think from what I witnessed with the two of you, the only time there was ever any conflict was when you were pissed off because he relapsed again. Remember the time, the Buffalo 66 years, which that's the one thing that we forgot to talk about, was the whole Buffalo 66 thing. So maybe we should just fill in the gap there. That was something where he was, I think I just had Sonny and he was in and out of using. He was trying to stay clean, but he was falling off the wagon all of the time. And I think that completely spoiled the whole Buffalo 66 experience, didn't it?
Well, it was weird. We was in a rehearsal once in Stockport, and I was suspicious he was. You can tell. You and me used to have a shorthand. We just have to look at it, like you'd look at him, nod, and we didn't even have to say a word. We both knew. And he was obviously not doing a lot because he was keeping it borderline and his sunglasses on. And that was actually suspicious in itself.
Yeah.
And then one day he said, I'm going to go out and get something to eat in rehearsals. I said, okay. So it'll be about half an hour. And he went out in the car, but what he didn't know was the car park camera was in the rehearsal room, and his car was right under the camera.
Oh wow!
And he sat in the car.
Oh.
We were just watching him.
Right.
And I was just like, and I remember I wasn't even angry. I was just, you know what it's like. It's different than anger, isn't it? It's just like a real kind of.
Yeah.
First of all, you feel betrayed, then you realise that's just selfishness on your behalf. Well, not for me, not for you. You've got family, it's different. But for me, as a friend, and then it was like, fucking hell, why, what to do? And then what do I do when he comes in? Do we approach him? And I mentioned it, and then he denied it. And I went, well, there's no point in doing it in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And he denied it, and then he'd go over the top, being over denying it, which is another sign they used to do, didn't they?
Yeah, I used to clean the house. Yeah.
I remember I think he said he'd just come back from one of the rehabs you'd pay for when he was in West Indies somewhere, Bahamas or something.
Antigua.
Yeah, and I remember thinking, well, if you're not gonna, and I was just like, I was thinking, this is, when you're not an addict, you think it's going to be easy, and if you're going to go in rehab, they're going to come out and it's going to be dandy, and it's not. It's the root that's the problem. It's not the addiction; it's the root of the addiction, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's kind of naive to think that. It would be, and it was great because he came in the band and he just brought so much to it. It was brilliant. Yeah. We did that Ian Brown tour. It was brilliant.
Oh yeah, the Ian Brown tour. I'd forgotten about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was brilliant, and he got us that tour. Paul got us that tour because he was in touch with him.
Yeah, and then he did the Big Arm tour after that.
I
remember
seeing his first Big Arm gig at the Eagle in Salford. I walked upstairs with him to stage, and he was so nervous, and he was fucking brilliant. And I'm not just saying that because he was brilliant. That took some bottles to do that.
The Eagle in Salford?
The Eagle, that was the first. The King's Arms, not the Eagle, the King's Arms, sorry.
In Salford?
In Salford, upstairs. It's kind of town, really, in the middle of town. It was the first gig he did. It was an in the city thing, I think. And it's off there, just off Deansgate. You go down that hill.
Right.
And it's just there, under the arches, near Victoria bus station. It's past the Salford, it's kind of centre town.
And that was a Big Arm gig, was it?
It was the first gig he ever did as a singer.
Right,
and he was shaking like a leaf.
I know, yeah. He was good though, wasn't he?
He was brilliant. I was with Pat, and we were like, you stood there, it's like, watching your kid at the nativity play, like, get the first words out. And he did, and it was brilliant. And the whole gig was brilliant.
Yeah.
And he did that kind of Terry Hall thing, which worked perfect for him.
He did. He sort of channeled Terry Hall and Bernard Sumner, I think.
Yeah. He did. But that worked perfect for him. It worked perfect for him.
Yeah. Brilliant. Derek, he talks about your close relationship with Derek. And
is that the dark stuff done? I'm
sure there'll be bits of dark. What else is there? I mean, the heroin addiction we've talked about, like we've talked about how destructive and disruptive it is, and how it led to him getting kicked out of Buffalo 66. It probably led to the demise of being in the Mondays for a long time.
Without a doubt, yeah.
I mean, he gave up when they got the Oasis, when the Oasis tour came up, which involved Australia. Sonny had just been born. That's when he left, and he left because he was worried he'd relapse because of Shaun. But I mean, he ended up relapsing anyway, didn't he? Yeah.
Well, even up to the last few gigs, approaching the venue, the gig, he'd always pop a pill and say, "What's that?" Says anxiety.
Yeah.
And you can see the dressing room, they come in and the tour manager say, "Shaun's 5 minutes away," and you could see it physically. Yeah. You could see him not twitching, but you could see. I could see it in him.
You mean in this lot of gigs, like recently?
Yes, right up to the last one we did. Yeah.
I mean, he was technically clean and sober from street drugs, but he was on so many psychiatric meds and anti-anxiety meds.
I agree.
And he never learned to actually do well without it.
Only Don the other day. The last gig he did, the Mondays, I didn't do it. It was Isle of Wight. I couldn't get out of Canada, so I didn't do the last gig he did, which for me isn't awful. But I think. But every gig, even up to the last one I did with him, you could see within 5 minutes going on stage, I used to think he was nervous going on stage, and I don't think he was nervous going on stage. And you could see, sometimes Shaun he'd say something, and you could see he was bothered if Shaun was going to say something about him. Yeah. I had the earphones, so I can't hear what's going on. But I'd say to him afterwards, "What did he say?" And he'd go, "Oh, nothing." Or he said, and he'd shout, he'd say something back. He wouldn't. But yeah, he was always really, really nervous, and I always thought it was,
Yeah. Okay, I suppose the other dark thing to talk about is like the last days. You've noticed that there was something wrong. Do you want to just talk about how
he arrived? He used to arrive at Linden's, and obviously I used to go around. He arrived about 3 days before we was rehearsing. 2 days, I think it was this time. And he just looked like he just sat still, and he kept saying, "Jaw's aching. I can't hear anything. I've got food in my ear." But he had panic in his face, and he looked panicked. He was scared, and he'd had it a couple of times before, but he looked scared. And he couldn't physically move, and I thought, is that a stroke, or is he going to have a heart attack? Something you could tell there was something more than just, we did a COVID test and they knew it was something else. It wasn't that, but obviously I have no idea what it was. But he's just something. And then the next day he wasn't any better. And then I sat with him all afternoon. He said, "I've got to get to rehearsal." So listen, don't go to rehearsals today. You don't need to. Just stay here, and I'll come back and see you afterwards. Or if you can get there later. I think Amelia's going to take him to Deansgate to get his ears syringed on the way. And I said, "But don't stress if he was rehearsing Cheap Mill. Don't stress if you don't get there." But then he turned up at rehearsal, and they sat him in the chair next to him. They put his bass round him, and he just sat there, his hand on his bass, and then he started to play, and he couldn't play. And he just said, "I can't hear." And I remember sometimes people exaggerate, but I was talking to him, went to the side, and he wasn't acknowledging me at all. So he was completely deaf. He wasn't just lost; he was completely deaf. And then we just finished. We said, "Oh, we'll finish. We won't call it a day." And Paul, I said to him, "Take him home. We'll be fine. Just go home, and rest." And on the way, I just said, "Right, I'll see you later." I don't know if he heard me. And I went, and it's funny. I got in the car. I drove off. I thought, and I didn't know anything was going to happen. I don't know, but I just thought, "Oh, he was feeling ill. Really, he's feeling ill. I should have given him a hug." And I didn't. I just said, "See ya." But I did that. I didn't. I thought if I give him a hug, he'll think, "Why are you hugging me? You think there's something?" You know what I mean? Because he knew me. So I thought that's why I did it, but I still should have done it. And I thought, and then I did just cross my mind. And then afterwards, all them things started coming up. He wasn't right the last few days. He was different than I've seen him in, as you have, in loads of different states and in loads of bits of illness. And this was different. He wasn't. He looked scared.
Yeah. What do you put it down to? What do you think happened? I mean, the cause of death being ischemic heart disease and diabetes. I was like, come on. I don't know. Well. I mean, I know it's been talked about before, but he did get a booster jab 3 weeks before and then flu. And that, I mean, that
was 3 weeks before.
3 weeks before, if it wasn't the day, Shaun said it was the day before. It wasn't. It was 3 weeks.
I didn't know that, right?
Yeah.
That's me. I haven't had any of them because I don't trust them. So, I haven't had a single shot. But would you have been shocked at any point if someone phoned you up and said Paul's had a heart attack? I mean, because I wouldn't, because he's never broke a sweat in his life, has he?
The symptoms that you were describing are not correlated with a heart attack, are they? There's some sort of clot, doesn't it?
I mean, there was no chest pain, there was no shortness of breath. he kept saying his jaw here and his jaw is here, and there was pressure here, which would like that's the first thing you said. There was no, he never said. I mean, he had no problems breathing. He was none of that. No, that was
even though he smoked like a troop.
When he was 18 and he joined the band, he didn't smoke, and we all smoked. And I said to him, "Why don't you smoke?" Because everyone smoked, and he said, "Oh, all that backwards and forwards with the arm, it's going to be like too much hard work."
That's
and I was like, and I can remember we sat in the morning down when he said it. I remember just looking at him going, "Oh God, that's brilliant." Just
How did you handle it when you got the call? Like, were you shocked?
Yes and no. One, like I said, if anyone had called me anytime he said he had an heart attack or I wouldn't have been. And same with me, because we're both anxious and people with anxiety get, and because of what happened the night before, and when the phone call went, he was Dan, and Dan never calls me. And I went, is it Paul? Oh, it's horse. And he went, yeah, you better sit down. I went, oh, I know, you don't have to tell me. I know what it is. And it didn't, I kind of just started running around the house and moving around trying to do something. I went for a walk and tried to kind of digest it all. It was just, I'm getting upset now. I just, it's weird, isn't it, when people close to you like that die? When you understand it and take it in, but then you don't really, do you? You do, and you don't. It's like Vanessa said to me the other week, "Can't believe Paul's not here anymore." Vanessa never saw him. She's only once a year or something. I was with you. I can't believe. And she said, "You know what?" She went, "He was always really nice to me, and she's really funny." And I said, "That's the thing, and that's what I was saying. The gigs, people don't understand how funny he is. Because he's funny. Even Paul Davis, the two funniest people I've ever met in your life. The funniest man in the world, really funny and clever funny. Not silly funny, clever funny."
Yeah.
And then Mark phoned, and Mark was absolutely beside himself. And when I got down to London, he was just bawling his head out, and he said, and he had an argument with Shaun and him, and he said, "I just can't cope. I've got to go." And he said, "But I don't want to leave him." And I've never seen Mark like that ever. And even the first gig we did in Scotland without Paul, and we was driving home, and Mark just leaned over to me and said, "We're going to be home on time." And I went, "I know." He went, "It's not the same about stopping every 30 minutes for Paul to have a cig and you have a piss." So I have a piss every 30 minutes and she has a cig. And he said, and he just looked at me and Mrs. Mark, and tears rolling down his eyes. He just put his head on my shoulder, and we both just started. I know we're going all Hollywood, but we both just started tears through now. He just really, and you know what? And Rowetta as well. She took it really bad, and she's been really good on stage. Every gig she's mentioned him. Every gig.
Yeah. Must be really difficult doing gigs with him not being there. How do you manage?
It's just weird because we never we had this thing of just not like glancing at looking at any. If I would do anything slightly fancy, I'd look over. I knew he was burning me out and burning the back of my head with his eyes. You know what I mean? I just go, and I knew he'd be like, "Oh, we both." Any of us make a little mistake, we'd look at each other and be like, no one else would spot it, and it's just very. Yeah, it's weird. I've gone into. I have what's called an ear. So I used to have one ear in when I've got all the sound and one out. So I have them both in now. It's really strange. But I've still got my last message to him that I never replied to. It is. So I don't know if you can see that, but I'm just asking him at the very end, the bottom one, "How are you feeling?" Right. You see that?
Yeah. Wow. Do you feel him around? Like, what's your belief? Do you feel like he's kind of got any kind of consciousness going on?
Well, it's hard, isn't it? But when I'm on stage, if I'm doing anything, yeah. But you know what? Whenever anything I do, I was talking about this the other night. We're doing these gigs and these Q&As, and the guy starts by saying, about Paul Ryder, and every night he gets a standing ovation. I'm not just saying that, honest. Every night's brilliant. He's just the guy just says, before we start, so I just start, it's like Paul Ryder. I say, yeah, because he starts to start the band, and every night, honestly, every night, and every gig when Rowetta said it, the old cheer.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, he was in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame memorial section.
Yes.
Oh,
yes, I see that. Someone sent it me. I know all posthumously, all the things he would have wanted, he's got posthumously, hasn't he?
Oh my God. And the funeral, the star-studded funeral. He would
You
have.
know what? The irony in it, I know that's what. You know what? That didn't go unnoticed by me. I knew you thought the same. It's funny because all these things, it's like, you know, I wish people fucking told him when he was alive. It's all
I
posh, you know.
know.
I
I know.
know everything. I used to get. It's funny after the gig. I just sort of said, "Oh, I sort of love that." You know, he loved it, and the same with all. It's the same thing, you know. He only gets the recognition he deserves, and it's posthumous, and it is too fucking late.
Yeah.
No, it's all people say. It's never too. It is too late. Should have got it when he was alive.
Yeah.
But you know, and it's yeah, and every night we talk about it, and even when I'm playing guitar or writing my own songs, every single time I do something, if there's anything slightly that might be slightly cheesy, he's there. I also because he taught me because he was my teacher when I was 15 when I joined the band, so he was a teacher when we started writing songs and doing music. And I'm not just saying this. This is honest. It's from the heart. This is true. Whenever I'm creating anything, he's always there, making sure that I don't do anything cheesy.
Yeah.
Always has been. Even when he was always the one you do something when you're writing songs. Look at say, here you go. Oh, that's cheesy. I won't do that. You know, you just give you that. You know that look.
Yeah.
You're looking like. So yeah. So in that way, yeah, his DNA lives on in everything I do.
Yeah.
But whether he's around consciously, I hope so.
Talk a little bit about the funeral. What you thought.
Well, just how we said, he would have loved to have been there. You know, sat in the seat at the back. No, not too. You wouldn't want to walk too far.
Yeah, he wouldn't have stayed long either, would he? He would have left.
He was heavy.
Oh right, yeah.
His guitar's in there with him. What? Or his cigs.
Cigs.
You know what? I had a TK Maxx empty bag. I was going to bring with me, put on the coffin for it, and I bottled it at the last minute. I thought someone might say it's bad taste that.
Me and Amelia were saying we're going to give everybody a goodie bag, a TK Maxx bag with a packet of Pall Mall, some sweets, and I can't remember all the other things. Like a little goodie bag for everyone at the funeral. Yeah.
Yeah, I struggled from start to finish, to be honest with you. And then at Bez's wedding, I struggled as well. I was sat to Amelia at Bez's wedding, I got really upset.
Did you? What, just because he wasn't there?
Yeah, well, Amelia sat next to her and said, I was just thinking, it was funny because I was just thinking, me and Vanessa was sat next to, I was there, and Amelia was there, and Vanessa said, Paul should be here, shouldn't he? And I went, yeah. And then literally 30 seconds later, Amelia said, my dad should be here. Literally, probably about a minute or something. And I was like, wow, you know, and I got me a bit upset.
Yeah.
But yeah, the funeral struggled from start to finish. And even you know what? I went back afterwards for a drink and I had one and I left. And I left because I didn't want to hear people, you know, when you go afterwards, you hear people saying how great they're, how great the friendship was, how great, who he hated and they didn't like. There weren't many of them people there.
There weren't many, but there was a handful, wasn't there?
A handful. And I knew I wouldn't be able to I wouldn't be able to say, oh yeah, I just have to say, yeah, but you fuck. And I didn't want any of the lip service and nonsense, and I just got to get away. And I justified it with myself by going, that's what Horse would have done. He'd have slipped off, wouldn't he?
He would have gone home early. He would. Yeah, he really would.
So I justified that with myself. And it's funny because at gigs we liked it quiet before and quiet afterwards, and we used to always. It's like now we do gigs, I'm the only one getting the van back to the hotel first on my own. It was always me and ours, you know. Yeah. And I think about it every day. I just like to say, look, for before the day I met it, you know. Anyway, you know, yeah. But what he does, he lives on. I remember he's drinking because he wasn't a massive drinker when we were younger.
Was he?
No. I mean, he'd have a drink and then. But as the time went on with the band, he started to drink more and more. As a band, when the fame hit the band, that's when he started drinking more, Paul. He was never a big... I mean, he'd drink, but because he always drove, he liked to drive everywhere, he didn't drink. He was always a designated driver, so he didn't drink. I remember he used to drink shandy most of the time, up until the band was successful. He used to drink shandy.
Really? Because he talks about going to the pub when he was 14 and going...
Well, maybe he did when he was out, because that was a kind of rite of passage. Maybe he did when he was 14, 15, 16. But when he passed his test, he drove. He didn't. He was on shandies because he was driving everywhere. He just wasn't a pub on them people, and he had Steffi went out with for a long time. You know, he wasn't a big drinker. But it's funny. I noticed this. I was thinking about this recently. As the fame progressed, he drank more and more and more.
Right. Yeah.
And obviously, and got into coke at one point. Him and PD got into it quite badly.
Do you think that the fame caused the addiction, or do you think that the addiction would have happened anyway?
I think the addiction would have happened anyway. I don't think the fame had anything to do with it. I think quite the opposite, actually. I think the loss of control in the band with the fame contributed to it, but not the fame. Not because I mean, you could, it's like me, he doesn't like the attention, but he wanted acknowledgement for what he'd done and what he achieved, and that, I think that pissed him off, and maybe that contributed. But the actual fame and the thing, no, I don't think that did personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he was pissed off that him and the band never got any credit for anything.
Yeah.
And he took that really personal.
And the fact that Shaun wouldn't write an album with him, like that he wanted. He told the story about when you and him went to meet McGee in Hollywood.
Yeah, in Hollywood, yeah.
And McGee said, "Oh yeah, Shaun wants to write all the music."
And then me and Paul both just said, "Well, it's not a Money's album; it's a Shaun Ryder album." He said, "Yeah, but he reckons it'll be a hit." And we went, "But we're in the situation we are now because we did the music. We was a band, And he said, "Well, Shaun reckons it was the producers that wrote all the hits." And I went, "Well, have a look at the publishing. It's not." And it wasn't the producers. It was songs that were hits before the publishers got involved. The producers got involved. And I just said, and I think McGee still believes that.
Really?
He said it to us at a gig in Scotland, a festival somewhere. Me and Paul had gone on to him. He asked us again, and we said, "No, we wrote the fucking songs. We wrote that. So, you wrote For Looks and all that, people's favourite songs." And he said, "Yep, Shaun said that it was the producers. He adamant it was the producers wrote that songs, not you lot." And we were like, I said to McGee, I think he's pulling your leg. I don't think he's being serious. We went, "No, I think he is." So I don't know whether he's being serious or not. I think
it's just that he wants to undo the importance of the musicians. I think Shaun.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's very difficult with singers and musicians, especially when there's always separation in bands with singers and musicians.
Mm-hmm.
There's always is,
mm-hmm.
and I think they both don't get each other, and I think it causes lots of issues. It's a very different monster being a musician to being a frontman or being a front. It's really different. So I don't know.
There's no logic though in cutting you out. Like if that has been the magic formula up to this point, then why change that? Why mess that up? Why cut you out? I don't understand.
I think he thinks that, and I've said this. I think he thinks that maybe we'll be stuck in the past and just want to make tunes like we used to do, and he wants to do something more modern, more contemporary. And that's not the case. I want to do something more contemporary. I want to do something. It's a tough one because you've got a fan base, so you've got to have some sort of link between the past, but you don't want to sound like the past.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? It's difficult writing music with few people because you end up having to compromise. It's easy with our one or two writers because when it's 3 or 4, you end up compromising, or it's difficult. So I think if maybe thinks it's just it'll be a lot easier.
So the writing process in the past was always that it was the musicians that wrote the music, and he would come in after the music was written and do the melodies and the lyrics. Like he had no involvement in the actual musicianship.
He had no involvement in the music, and we had no involvement in the lyrics. No, we used to start off with usually bass line or some keyboard a lot of times with PD later on, but early on it was bass line and then drums, and then Mark had always put some great guitar, and Shaun would sit on the floor scribbling and singing. And then so always start with music. I can never come in with lyrics, and then we try to do it. It was always the music first, and then that's just how we did it. Yeah, back then. Yeah.
It's funny how he's got this mental block. It's odd, but just beggars belief, really. I don't understand.
No, I don't know. Bands are complicated, aren't they? Musicians are complicated. I don't know. People have their own ideas of what makes a band work, or everyone thinks it's their part's the most important, or everyone that's just bands, and
Do you think the tension between Shaun and Paul actually helped and added to the magic of the Mondays? Do you think without that tension there wouldn't have been the magic?
I don't think so. I don't think it did. Maybe early on, I don't think so. Because when we were writing, there wasn't a lot of tension, not a lot of friction. Right. We didn't really, we never really stepped on each other's toes, any of us. We were all very diplomatic when it came to writing music. So I don't think so. Then maybe between them in their own heads, but I didn't say anything like that. No.
Or do you think the opposite is true, that if there hadn't been that sibling rivalry, that the Mondays would have had many more albums and been more productive and had more output?
Oh, that's a good question. There's many number of things why we didn't. You know, we all blame each other, and we were all to blame. Every one of us. Every one of us. Maybe both are good questions, actually. Maybe I'm completely off the mark with both. I didn't really notice it in the early days. I'm younger than them both, so I didn't really see it in the early days as much. It was only later on when I kind of saw that, and they were both very cautious not to show it in public. Part of the time when we were in the jungle in Panama, they started arguing, and then the argument ended up them both arguing who had the biggest belly.
Oh, you got to tell us about this. I don't know this.
Oh, it's a brilliant story. So we go to this in the Amazon. So we go down to the river, and there's some guy interviewing from a local Panama Times, whatever. So he does interview. He's right, photographs. Can you get your drumsticks and you get your guitar and stand in the river and have your photographs taken? And me and Horse went, no, it's not the Swinton Journal. You know, like them local newspapers when you do that. I'm not doing that.
I remember.
And Shaun went into a rant saying, you know, you do what was supposed to be done. You know, don't be getting all precious and all that. So then them two started arguing. We went out the river, and then John was saying this is how the TV works. And Paul said, "No, Angela was involved. She knows the producer, director. You know, blah, 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 you know what?" And the argument went on back and forth for ages. And one of them was stood in a canoe. Paul stood in a canoe. Shaun stood on the shoreline, and they were arguing. And then he said, "Well, you're just fat and lazy." But you're fat and lazy. And then one got the belly out. So look at my belly. They both had the bellies out, going, "My belly's bigger than yours. Your belly's bigger. I've got diabetes." He said, "I've got heart disease." You know, they both fine. And everyone was just stunning shot. And he got to the point before that, me and Bez were trying to split it up. And at that point, me and Bez just burst out laughing. And I remember me and Bez sat on the bank, just couldn't stop laughing. And what was brilliant was the guy who was the director of it all, and it would set it all up, the interview. After it finished, the guy who was our manager then, he was apologising to the director, went, "Oh, no, it's fine. I've got a brother and we're exactly the same."
Were they filming the argument? Did it end up on camera? The argument?
Yeah, but I don't think they ever used it.
They didn't use it. Oh, that would have been the best bit.
Yeah, it would. Oh, it was so funny. I literally had the bellies out arguing. He was just the biggest. Honestly, it was just, but they were angry at each other. It was just so comic.
What was the point of trying to prove they had a bigger belly than the other one?
I think one that they weren't as mobile, so they were being so getting in the water was being like, you know, being really heroic.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It was, but Paul, you know, I was on Paul. He was right. I thought he was right. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I got Shaun's point as well. You know, you've got to do your president. But Paul's like, you know, in the water, it looks like we're in the.
No, you wouldn't have your bass guitar in the river, would you?
Well, it just looked like one of them that young, and Paul's very conscious of how visually how we were seen, and that's what that was. Yeah. And you know what, that stood us in good stead from day one. So yeah. You know, so I you know, he was right. But then again, Shaun was saying, well, it's, you know, it's a newspaper in Panama. No one's going to see, you know, and then Paul, well, so what is the matter then, does it? So then they just went, and he was like, but it was like a proper, like an old argument, and they used to have fights when they were younger. They used to stand toe to toe fighting, punching each other.
I remember one in Birmingham. That broke out in the rehearsal room, and I was filming for something else at that point, and Rowetta marched me out with the camera. Were you there on that? You must have been when London Records came to see you when you were in the school.
Yeah.
And bricks came through the window. Yeah. Can you tell me about that?
It was a girl I used to go out with. Who was always hanging out outside. I hadn't gone out with her, so I don't know whether it was her or not. We always thought it was her, but we have no proof it was her or her friends. We have no idea it could have been her. But it was in this old Methodist church school, and it was a safe area. It was a nice area. It wasn't a bad area or anything. And London Records Publishing came up to see it. No, London Records came up to see it. You're right, not the publishing came up. And they came in and they said, "Oh, what's it like?" You know, they said, "Oh, we couldn't find Manchester. We couldn't find this." And they came in. We said, "Oh, the car's okay." We said, "Yeah, it's fine. It's safe around here. I don't think they've even been up north." So yeah, it's completely safe up here. It's fine. It was a low crime area. It wasn't a bad area. And literally 10 minutes through the first song, the brick came through the window, and they just all dived on the floor like it was under mortar attack. And because we were so nervous and wanted them to hear the song, we all carried on playing. So they thought this must be a regular occurrence. They didn't flinch when this happened, which wasn't the case. And then when it finished, Derek said something brilliant. When it finished, Derek broke the ice and went, "We must be getting better." And they went, "Why?" He went, "Last week it was 2 bricks." That's a real Derek one as well, isn't it?
Oh, super.
And then they left, and that was it. Well, nobody said they wanted us to dress up like culture.
They said you didn't have an image.
Yeah, and Paul was really angry at that. I remember Gaz was like, he thought we were everyone thought we were Mormons. Wherever we went, people go, the Paul saws it. When first I went to my side, this guy comes to this restaurant and went, "Are you guys Mormons?" Like, we had haircuts and little beards and the clothes, the cords and all that. We got it all the time. You guys Mormons? Honestly, we must have got it about 3 or 4 times in the early days. You guys Mormons? Yeah, all the time.
And it was a Perry boy look.
Yeah, but we'd got onto the kind of goatee beard and then he was like, and he said the guy who was with him from the London Records said, "Are you a Christian band?" And we went, "No." Why? He went, "No, because the clothes. Are you Mormons?" And we went, "No." Yeah. And then Shaun said something like, "It's what they dress like on football terraces. Gaz is a football hooligan," which of course I wasn't.
Right.
The football, but he just said, to get the point across. And Derek said, "Football hooligan, Gaz. He has to run round in the shower to get wet." And then Paul said, "Yeah, if Gaz is at a fight, he couldn't put a cig out."
Brilliant.
I remember that really clearly. That
Brilliant.
night.
Derek's influence at the beginning. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, Derek did everything. If it wasn't for Derek, we wouldn't have done anything. He brought the PA in. Obviously he was a bass player. Paul listened to him a lot, but obviously Derek and Shaun. Shaun didn't want. You don't want your dad around here when you're doing that. You don't. It must be, that's what I thought early on. It must be really difficult. You're in a band, you have a bit of a wild time and so on and that, and your dad's driving the van and doing the sound and everything. Right. So it was difficult because we loved it. It was great, but it must have been really hard. It must have been really hard for Shaun and Paul. It must have been really hard for him. I didn't really appreciate the times. You don't, as a kid, you don't think about it, do you? Right,
but he didn't really behave like a kind of a shielding parent, did he? He was one of the lads, wasn't he, Derek?
Not early on, he kind of was when we got a proper crew, when he got on board with the crew, he was great, yeah, he was. But early on, he had to, he was one in charge of everything, had to keep us in control. But and we used to make fun of him sometimes, and he used to just ignore us and get on with it. But if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have left the rehearsal room. And I said, luckily, before he died, the last time I seen him, I went around and I said to him, I just said, "Thanks, without you, we wouldn't have got anywhere." Glad. And the funny, because I said to Paul, I said, "I went to see Derek last night, your dad." We never called him your dad because he used to just laugh when we said that, your dad. Then I used to say also last night, I just said, "Thanks for doing it." I said, "Oh, you'd appreciate it. I'm glad you did that." He said, "I say it to him all the time."
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I know Paul, Paul and Derek were really, yeah, I know.
Have you got any good Derek anecdotes from being on tour with him?
Got a great one about Barry. Derek and Barry. We did the Colourfield tour, and Barry said, and Derek's partner was with us, and Barry was always saying he was in the Rolling Stones, and Derek goes, "Oh, he did it, tour of the Stones, and Barry said, "I've done drugs all around the world with the Rolling Stones. I've done all that rock and roll. You can't show me anything." And he looked like a little skinny Dustin Hoffman, Barry. Spit of him, but dead skinny. And he was kind of the stooge. He was like the Bobby Ball of their double act, you know what I mean? And we had to sleep in the van. We had no money for a hotel on a services in Leeds. And I woke up in the morning, looked behind me, and he was injecting himself. And I freaked out. And I was like, Barry was injecting himself. And I was like, all day, we've all been taking a piss out of him. He really is. He's been like the rock and roller. He's still doing it now in his 40s. And all day I was really quiet. And I didn't know how to bring it up. And we did the sound check at the gig and went backstage before it was going on. And everyone was in the room. We'd had a bit after a couple of beers, I loosened my tongue and I said, "Saw Barry injecting in the van this morning." And they all burst out laughing. So what are you all laughing at? And Paul went, "He's a diabetic, you dickhead." I didn't know that.
Oh, brilliant.
I think he's injected into his leg. I think he was injected into his leg near his knee, if I remember. I can't remember, it was a long time ago.
Oh, God. That's a bit grim. Okay, so Paul tells a very, very funny story about when you played Wembley for the first time.
Right.
Do you know what I'm talking about? And
No.
You grab him at the end after you've come off stage and you say, We did it. I did it. I did it. I did it.
Oh, right. I played at Wembley.
Right. Do you know what the story is that he tells?
I'll go and tell me. Go on.
And he was thinking that you meant, played at Wembley. And you're like, no, I wore women's knickers all the way through the gig.
Oh, I've forgotten all about that. Can't believe it. How do you remember that? I'd forgotten about that.
I mean,
Keith Moon had done it once or something, so I had to do it. And I can't believe that's unbelievable. How do you remember things like that? See, I completely forgot that.
Would you forget that?
I've completely forgotten it. I remember it now.
Brilliant. So
I remember it now. I do remember it now. But I'd completely forgot about that.
Well, there you go.
But I remember because Keith Moon had done it. Bloody hell.
Oh, you did it because Keith Moon did it?
Keith Moon has allegedly done it, yeah.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. All right. How did you feel when Paul left the band in 2000? So you just got this Oasis tour. How did that?
I think it was Australia tour before Oasis.
Yeah.
It was Australian tour, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
I didn't want to do the tour. I don't think Bez wanted to do the tour, but I think we had to do the tour. I think it was all booked and sold.
Why didn't you want to do it?
Well, first of all, from a selfish point of view, panic. Because, as a drummer and bass player, Paul, we hooked in together and getting someone new to play, someone who didn't know. We'd always, don't forget, Paul was like the older brother, so it was like a crutch that I kind of needed. I knew it wouldn't be as good. I knew it was also, it was the first time he'd never done a Mondays gig. He'd done every single gig till then. He'd never missed one. That's the first. So I knew, and you know how much it meant to him. You know as much as I do how much it meant to him. And I knew if he wasn't doing that, it was serious.
Mm.
So that was I think that as well. And it was fucking rubbish.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was rubbish. Yeah. I don't even play bass. I don't even know who did it.
What about the wilderness years?
The fake Mondays.
Yeah.
You know what? That was I never really saw that as a Mondays. It was a weird thing because I was doing more DJing than gigs, and they did gigs without me as well, without telling me. They did a few gigs without telling me. Oh, wow. I didn't do. They didn't tell. One they did in Barcelona at the films, and I didn't even know they'd done the gig because I wouldn't. Because it was the guy who was the manager. It was his brother who was doing the film, and they all had. It was all anything I didn't agree with. They didn't tell me. So there were just things where I was backwards and forwards to Australia. They were doing gigs, and I wasn't involved in it. And they did this gig in Barcelona and put it out on DVD. I didn't know anything about it, and he even said on it at one point, "I'm playing on it." And I wasn't even there. I didn't know anything about it.
Wow,
it was a strange time. That doing a lot more DJing, and what was I doing? I was doing my football coaching, and I wasn't really taking it that serious. And I don't know what it was. I think I just did it for the money, to be honest with you. I mean, that was basically it. I think it was just for the money.
Yeah.
It was very strange times. I got much recollection of it, but I bet we did a few gigs though. Went to Japan twice, or once.
What about when the band reformed again in this last incarnation? That would have been 2012. Do you remember how that came about? I remember we found out about it by reading about it in The Sun. That was a tactic to announce it in the press that everybody was reforming again.
Yeah. I didn't know.
You found out about it that way as well?
Yeah, I was in Canada, so I was like, what? And then and I'd seen these emails off someone, I didn't know who it was, so I never even opened them. Thought it must be someone I'm not even opened, so I didn't open them. And then I missed a phone call, so I thought, it may be. So I phoned him back, and he was like really angry at me. Oh, you phoned me now, are you? And I went, who are you? What are you? Who are you? What is it? And he got really angry. And I went, oh, fuck off, and put the phone down. Then I got an email from him saying, I can't remember how it went, but yeah, it was all very, very strange. It was all, it wasn't a good feeling, to be honest with you. It wasn't, but I think me and Paul were optimistic that it was going to be a new start and go back to when we first started, rather than but it just kind of just took off from where we left off.
Right. Yeah.
I think that to me, Paul was really supportive. I think that's when he went into his darkest times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with the band, definitely, because we both thought this was a new start, everything would be different, and it wasn't. In fact, it was probably the issues you had were probably worse, and it was still there. So it wasn't. So I mean, I think that was, and for me as well, it was like a kind of it was like winning the lottery and then losing your ticket kind of thing. You know what I mean? Where it was like, oh, great, and it was great, and there was loads of instances. We was playing big venues doing that, and then, but it was still the same. Like it's like we hadn't even split up, and it was just the same issues with it. And it was kind of a soul destroying, really. I remember I was on bad anxiety after that because I was so disappointed in it. So I can imagine.
What was particularly disappointing you? Because on the surface, it looked like a massive success. You were doing.
Oh no, he was artistically, it was a massive success. But just like I think being back as a close band again, the good thing that came out of it. Me and Paul got back really close again, which was good. We'd have bits in the middle where we weren't friends and people had got involved and we weren't, and that was sad. But literally, it was like starting again. Literally, in the first 5 minutes, we were best friends again, and that was really, really good. And we both said that to each other since. We both said that was the best thing about it.
Yeah.
And but yeah, the issues that were in the band hadn't changed. So that was really disappointing.
What are you talking about there specifically? Just Shaun's attitude towards everyone?
I think, well, yeah, not just that. I think everyone's attitude towards each other. I think the dynamics in the band, to be, to be very conservative about saying what I'm going to say. But yeah, I think the dynamics about in the band and kind of taken for granted. That kind of, there's this fear, not that we wanted acknowledgement to start and all that, but if he could pacify as much as he could, that was it. He was really Shaun's manager, not the band's manager. We had this opportunity where there was interest to get it started again. Oh no, and we knew, and you knew, and that I think that you knew, Paul knew, I knew, we all knew, and we were powerless to do anything. And that kind of that makes you feel something. Close this door, somebody freezes. That makes you feel, bad about yourself because you're not really, it was a difficult situation. Yeah, and I think just because opportunity, and we got back and we played really well but I tell you what was interesting because when it was a proper band, it was so much different, so much better than the Fake Mondays. It was like it was like a massive different monster. It was amazing, and everyone I think everyone thought it was going to be a bit of a process and a bit difficult. It wasn't. It came back straight away.
Yeah,
it was really, really good, and everyone was excited musically.
Are there any like quintessentially Paul anecdotes that you can think of off the top of your head? Just funny one-liners. What about the funeral when all his nicknames were read out?
Oh, he's the best at nicknames. Absolutely brilliant at nicknames. There was one brilliant. So there's loads, as you know, but remember, I don't know why this one's just come to me head. It just come to mind. I was about 17, and there was this journalist, a female journalist in Manchester, quite attractive, and Paul had got friends with her. He was a friend of hers, and he said he'd done an interview with her. I said, "Oh, she wants to interview you." So he said, "Oh, okay." So the friends got talking and said, "Oh, she fancies you. Will you go on a date with her?" So I said, "I'll go on a date with her if a friend comes and Paul comes as well." So I went there was a pub across the road from Phil Sax's, the Arndale, and the two girls already sat there, and Paul sat with a friend, and I sat with this journalist on this date, and I thought, oh, she's quite attractive. Yeah, it'd be a good date, but I didn't know her real name. Paul called her Android, and I thought, why does he call that? And when she started talking, she talks a little bit like that. So I thought, oh, but only a little bit. So I thought, oh, that's because of Android, that's why he calls it. And I had a little giggle to myself and all that. And I thought, that's fine. Anyway, so after a few drinks, she said, I'm getting up to go to the toilet. And she got up and she went like this. I looked like a robot, and my head just hit the table. I looked at him and I went, "You bastard." And he went, "I told you." Anyway, he had this other girlfriend from Boston called Paula, and he used to call her Olive Oil, which the song was after. But his other nickname for her was Peepers and Creepers. And he'd met her in town. He said, "Oh, we're going to meet her at town. Come and meet her." And I don't know, I was with a girlfriend at the time. I went to meet her. And she turned up and I said, "Why do you call her peepers and creepers?" He said, "You'll see." And she came in and she had big feet and big eyes. And I was like, "You bastard, you know, peepers and creepers, olive oil." And then it was funny, we had, when he was going out with Alison, I met a girl from Liverpool when I was in Rill. And I was going to go down and see her for the weekend. And Paul went, "Oh, I'll drive. I'll take you down. I mean, I'll still take you down and drop you off. And we'll drive back down Sunday and pick you up if you want anything, you know." I said, "Oh, really?" He went, "Yeah. So we did, and we got to the house, and her and Alison knew each other. They'd been on a school trip, and the two schools had met in Wales 3 years earlier, and they knew each other.
Wow.
How bizarre was that?
Wow, that's weird.
Isn't it?
Really weird. Wow.
Isn't it? Well, they both went, "Oh," Alison, "Oh." She called Suzette and Alison, "Oh." And they went, "Do you know each other?" They went, "Yeah."
Oh, it's so bizarre.
How crazy is that?
Yeah, weird. Ugh. Life's strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah. I think we've been given the wrong information about things generally.
You reckon? You think? Yeah. Everything, yeah. And you know, that's the other thing that I was loving about Paul and all that, because all my theories and my spiritual and all that kind of stuff, even though he never ever ridiculed me or ever, but he just let me go on about it, and then he'd smile or say something or have a joke about it. He never ever like others in the band would roll their eyes and go, you know, but never did, never ever.
I think he's pretty open-minded on the spiritual sense. I really do. Like he was very open-minded, I think. That's why I think that it's very likely that he's around. Like, because I'm working on this podcast and I'm seeing him, I don't think he's dead, really, because I see him all the time. And it makes it feel like it's weird. It's really weird.
I know.
But
yeah. I know.
Yeah.
He's the only person that had a nickname that was and this is one of the greatest. We had loads of nicknames for each other. You know, we used to call him Alf Roberts and Snorbit and all that. We had loads of nicknames for him, but he had one and loads for me. We had the best nicknames, and no one ever got offended. You know, no matter how bad the nickname was, no one ever got insulted. We never got upset with each other. The nickname that me and PD'd give him, and it wasn't even a word; it was a musical line. So that, you know, and you probably know, so if he'd do something that was really harsh, like me and PD would go ding 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 ding, and even Paul had, like, even at a gig, it was one of the first bass lines he ever caught for a song called, I think it was called Weekend Starts Here or something. It was one of the very first bass lines he ever came up with. And like, say you'd do something like for the past year, and I'd look at him, he'd go ding 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 ding, you know, or like we used to, like we'd be walking down the street, and there'd be some like you should always do real caricatures of exaggeration. There'd be like some overweight Greek bloke with a big dark beard, and beard walk towards me. I'd look at him, he'd go ding 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 ding. Or if he was like a skinny camp bloke with blonde grey hair, he'd go to me. He's all, we'd have to. His nickname was ding ding ding. His nickname was a bass line. How brilliant is that, isn't it? And I tried to explain this to people the night again. I can't articulate it, but his nickname was a bass line. Ding 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 ding. And PD don't see what used to do it to him.
It was nice to see PD at the funeral. He was.
Well, three of us were really close at one point. Really, really close.
Yeah. Are you still in touch with him?
Not too much, but a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the three of us are really, really, you know.
Yeah. Well, you've gone through a lot together, haven't you? It's been a
long. We just had a very similar sense of humour. You know, very similar. You know.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else anything you thought you wanted to say, or any other funny things?
Just that it's the corniest cliche in the world, but you know, he's an older brother to me, and he really was. He was like, he really, honestly, really, really, really felt like that. I'm not being disingenuous. He really was.
Oh, is that Sandra? Hi, Sandra.
How are you doing?
Hey, are you coming to the do, Sandra?
Yeah, we're all hoping to get there. Okay, yes,
brilliant. You're not going to be there, Gaz, are you?
No, my mum started drinking already for it.
Good. Are you going to be back?
No, I'll go back to camp, but I might not. But if your passport don't come through,
all right. Well, then you'll be at the do. I've never had a problem with a birthday before, but now this one, it's too much. I'm just going to call it my 50th.
okay. Right, I'm going to the pub. Yeah, okay. If you want to speak again, just let us know. We'll do another time.
All right. Yeah, I might.
I've got loads of time in Canada.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much.
In fact, I'd like to talk more about it because it's been quite cathartic. That I feel just got a shiver down my spine there. He's fucking here, isn't he?
Yeah, of course he is.
Just got all really cold shivers. Oh, that's fucking weird.
Really?
Oh, it's boiling in here.
Okay.
Honestly, that is fucking weird. Oh, it's not going either. Oh, that's not going. Oh, that's very strange. Oh, fucking hell, my heart's going now. Oh, that's very weird. You get cold shivers, they last for like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very weird that my heart's going now. That's fucking weird, that was very weird. Fucking hell, right, I'm going to go, I need a pint.
All right, thanks, Gaz.
Let's speak again, please, Andrew. Let's speak again. I think loads more anecdotes and things about it. I want to speak about him a bit more.
All right. Yeah, of course.
Oh,
yeah. The more the better. We've got 20 episodes. So there's hours and hours and hours of this, and like it's just gonna all get released.
Brilliant. Yeah, I want to talk more about him because I know loads of good things. And I remember more now. I would definitely
just start making little notes to remember some stories, because the funny bits are just great. Like we need a bit of light relief.
Right, okay. So speak again. Take care.
Talk to you soon. Give my love to Vanessa and the boys.
Well, forget to see you. See you later.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Gaz and Paul were like brothers, ones that actually got on. And Gaz was one of the most special people in Paul's life. I caught up with him as he was rehearsing with his side project Yogi G and the Family Tree in Latch's Tough Gong studio in Warrington.
Oh shit, Phil, sorry. Oh, it's all right. It's okay if it's because
So tell me about. Sorry, hang on, I forgot to press record on the Zoom.
Hey!
Recording in progress.
It doesn't matter because Phil's recording you, and we've got. It's just. So anyway, sorry.
Let's allow this.
1 second, I'm just turning the whole PA out.
Is that Latch?
Yeah.
Hey, we were putting your.
Don't get him talking. For God's sake.
We were putting your story in the podcast the other day. Your dating story, very, very, very funny.
Did you see that? Very funny.
You are funny for the first hour.
He's got a lot. Gotta get on my tits.
Oh, God, right pair of wings.
I'll leave you to
it. So my mum and Linda, Paul's mum, Linda Ryder, probably first met at one of the early Mondays gigs, probably one of the big ones because they weren't allowed to come to any other gigs. We didn't like family coming, apart from obviously Derek was always there. And then they hit off straight away. I think they had a mutual liking of alcohol and music and rock and roll. So every Wednesday night, my mum used to go down to Linda's house for what they call Rock and Roll Wednesdays. And my mum would drink a bottle of rum and Linda would drink a bottle of vodka, and they would play rock and roll music. And that went on for 30 odd years they've been doing that, to this day. And they wonder where we get it from, eh? You know what? If you've seen the Leonard Cohen documentary, the last one, I can't remember what it's called, and it says, there's a woman on it talking about, she says, musicians and writers and all that, she went, you can always tell, she said, with the males, because they always have crazy mothers.
Really? Oh, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it was very close. I mean, like early on when we used to go do all the gigs, like obviously Derek did everything, sound, drove, loaded the equipment, did everything. And Linda used to always make us sandwiches for the trip, and because I didn't eat meat, she used to say, there's some cheese for Gaz. So it was great. So it was all very, back then we were all very close. It was all, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but we were.
And you called her the Butty Queen.
You said that, not me.
You did. You called her even Paul called her the Butty Queen.
Yeah, the Butty Queen. You want a butter? Yeah, that's used with her.
I find it really hard to fathom that Linda and your mum are 80, like they're old ladies now, technically, but they're not. I can't relate to them like old ladies. It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, they're not, are they? No, yeah. My mum, she says, has got more going than me. Like, she says, like, what's your perfect night out? And I say, well, sat in a pub, in an old man's pub, about 4 people there, with a pint of Guinness and a book. And she's like, you're bloody boring, you. Get out partying. And like, she goes out and has her friends and dances and all that. And I'm like, Don't want no. I'm like Paul. Don't want noise. I'm not here to sit there reading my book and drinking me Guinness on my own.
So, talk to me a little bit about how close. Paul mentioned that you were particularly close to Derek growing up. Like he was almost as much as a father figure to you as your own father, because you had you were together so often. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Well, when we started, don't forget, I was 15, 16, so Derek was the one that, we didn't know what we were doing. He knew how to set up, we didn't even know how to plug in. I mean, the first drum kit I got, Derek set it up for me, and he'd tune it for me. So I don't know, and then he was driving the van, he was touring, he was doing everything. And I look back, it was easy for me and Mark. Mark worked with him, so Mark was very close to him, and I got on with him. I thought he was funny, but it must have been hard for Paul and Shaun, you know what I mean, to have the dad around all the time. He must have, I never thought about that, but it must have been really difficult. It must have been really hard for him. For me, it was easy, so I think I had one argument with Derek in all the time, and that was over nothing, you know. I never argued with him. It was easy for me, but it must have been hard for Shaun and Paul.
Did Shaun and Paul argue with him? Like, did they have like father-son type dynamics?
Shaun did more than Paul. Paul was a little bit more relaxed, and I think Paul got on with him more, but Shaun clashed with him more. I think Shaun and Derek were more similar. Paul was a little similar as well, but Shaun clashed more.
Was Derek related to by the crew as one of the crew, or is Paul and Shaun's dad? Like, how?
That's a good question. Yeah, he wasn't really. It got to the point where we forgot he was the dad. I mean, that they didn't, but we kind of did. Well, yeah, there was always loads of in-jokes and all that kind of thing, but it was always really respected. We always had a load of respect for him, and we used to joke about him and all that, because we was a different generation. But it was only kind of harmless stuff. It was never any, you know, because we'd screwed without him.
Talk to me about the rivalry between the brothers.
That's a strange one, because they kind of both would never admit there was one, and maybe that's a good question. It's hard to say from the outside. Well, I'm sorry, from the inside, sorry, because I didn't really see any competition until they were much older. I didn't notice it until much older. I just thought brothers. You know, I had a younger brother. I didn't talk to him. You know, so, and I was younger, so they all kind of looked at me as just a little bit of a kid, maybe. So it's kind of difficult. I don't know. I was closer to Paul, so they would get into arguments and like literally fist fights. And Mark, because he's big, would jump in the middle of them. And I had 2 fights with Shaun. Never had any fights with Paul. But that doesn't mean I got on with Shaun as well. Early on in the early days, I got on with Paul. But they had a kind of. I don't feel early on there didn't seem to be a rivalry. Paul was in charge of the band early on, and I think Shaun was quite happy with that. You know, Paul was one that was really serious about it all. I think Shaun, I wouldn't say he wasn't serious, but it was a bit more carefree about it. So I didn't really see a rivalry early on.
Can you remember what the cause of any of those fights were? Can you remember?
It'd probably been over nothing. On the last one they had was when we was in the Amazon jungle, and the argument was over who had the biggest belly. And they actually had the bellies out, and they were like, my belly's bigger than mine's bigger than yours.
No way.
And you know, seriously, true. It started off about something else that ended up who had the biggest belly.
Did it ever bother you though that when you saw the relationship between the two of them deteriorating? Did it bother you? Did it affect you in any way?
The relationship between us all deteriorated. You know what really weird? And this is a real other cliche. Mark always kept himself on the outside, away from it all, wisely. But me, PD, Paul and Shaun were very close, and then Bez when he came in. Bez was always a free bird doing his own thing. And I think early on, and it's different. Shaun being a singer and not playing an instrument, he was kind of outside from us, so it kind of got me and Paul being really, and PD being really close, and then Shaun and Bez. Accidentally, and them two not getting on, yeah, it did. But there was a kind of a bit of that with all of us. And like I say, it was really, and this is a real cliche, like, but I didn't have an older brother, I had an older sister, so Paul was like an older brother to me. And I know that's a real cliche, but it really was. It really was. You know, like I said, we were very close and got on, and then we fell out over silly things, but he was like an older brother to me. So it was a band thing that I didn't really. Honestly, I didn't see it as them two were. In fact, I didn't see him as brothers in the band. Not until after a reform, probably, and we'd split up. Really didn't see him as brothers in a band, just two different members.
And they weren't alike in any sense, really, were they?
None of them, all had the same sense of humour. We all had a very similar sense of humour. Shaun was Paul was the quiet. You see, it's kind of weird because Paul was a quiet. You think Paul was a quiet one, and Shaun was the loud one, and that was, on the surface that was the case. But they were both. All of us were shy. Some of us were loud. Some of us weren't. So they were very similar but very different as well. I mean, Paul were very similar but very different, and Shaun and Paul were very similar but very different. We all kind of like the same things.
Was Shaun shy deep down? Would you say?
I think Shaun shied it down. Yeah, definitely. I think even Bez is probably. Mark isn't. Mark's not shy. But me, PD, and Paul were definitely insecure and not insecure for the wrong, shy. I think Shaun's shy as well. Yeah, I think Shaun. Yeah, I think he's shy.
Do you not think everybody in the whole world is shy? It's just how well you mask it.
You know what? Probably, yeah. Some people with bravado. Some people. No, a lot of people are. Certainly a lot of people in the arts. Yeah, maybe you're right. Yeah, but we definitely had a lot of imposter syndrome. I don't think we ever expected to do anything. Paul probably did. He had inner ambitions, but we probably didn't. And I think once we made it, we expected it to implode at any point. And I don't think Paul did. Paul saw this as what he wanted and wanted it to carry on, you see. Maybe.
Do you think the tensions between Shaun and Paul ultimately added to the magic of the band? Or do you think it detracted?
I personally think it detracted. Maybe at some level, I think so.
So if there hadn't been that tension between them, how do you think things would have been different?
Yeah, it's hard to say. We did okay, so maybe boring, so maybe I'm contradicting myself. It's a tough one, yeah. It would escalate quickly and they'd get into like fist fights, and it was kind of uncomfortable, you know, it wasn't nice to be around. But musically I don't think it had an effect, but I think communication-wise it did. But with all of us, you know, I think we did the music and Shaun did the lyrics and singing. And I look back and I think, well, he must have felt as an outsider. You know, I didn't think that at the time. I used to think, oh, don't be daft, you know, but I mean, looking back, maybe he did. And I think just maybe we didn't share enough to get each other. To get your opinion across, you had to fight for it rather than discuss it. I think that, you know, which is a shame, you know what I mean? There's, you know, or compromise so it didn't cause an issue between us all. So, like I say, I was thinking about this. We didn't see him as brothers in the band. It was just two different members of the band.
Do you think that it was more serious than your regular sibling rivalry or sibling spats? Like, do you think there was a darker, deeper thing going on?
Yeah, I mean, in a band together, so if you, oh, what, you sound pretentious, you're creating art together, there's going to be, isn't there? So, I don't know. They were close in age, weren't they? What's the difference about?
19 months.
Right, yeah. There was always trying to outdo each other. Right. They always trying to outdress each other and out aftershave each other early on. I remember that, the asphyxiation from the aftershave from the pair of them. You could go in an hotel. You know which hotel room each of them was in because you could smell it down the lobby. I remember getting in a lift once in New York and I could smell the aftershave. I got in the one lift going up and it was Lagerfeld, so that was Shaun's, and then coming down it was Hugo Boss and it was Paul's.
So, did you get an impression though that there was something kind of deeper than your regular just brother to brother wrangling.
Outside the band, them and the respective partners would go on holiday together. They were friends, so they didn't have like. It was weird because I remember Paul didn't have a group of male friends, and Shaun didn't have a group of male. You know, like they didn't go out but they were older, so they were both settled down. Shaun was married when we formed the band, and then Paul was with a girl called Steph. So no, and you know what? When I look back, they got on pretty well. Early days, they got on quite well.
Okay, we're jumping ahead way here, but Paul talked about Shaun not wanting to do an album, like why he thought Shaun didn't want to do an album. Why do you think Shaun didn't want to do an album? Doesn't want to do an album?
Now?
Yeah.
With bands, it's different now. Now I've been out of it, and now I've got another band that I'm playing guitar and singing. It's different because when you're writing, when you're doing your music, what we did when the band, because it was all of us writing, you end up arguing. There's 4 or 5 opinions, and you end up compromising. So I don't think he wants to go through all that again because he doesn't have probably didn't have to with Backdrape, and obviously Mark usually goes along with stuff, wasn't real, but me and Paul would be quite opinionated. So maybe it's because of that. Is that what Paul said? I don't know. What did Paul say?
He said that he didn't think Shaun wanted to help him and the rest of the band make money. Like he just wanted to have it all to himself, and he didn't have respect for them, for you all as musicians. He'd rather work with other people and try and pass it off as a money. Like he just didn't have respect for the musicians.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's hard to say, innit? It's definitely I don't know that, you can only speculate. Definitely the hassle of it all. Because I think the combination of us all arguing, the chaos of us arguing made what was successful. But when you get to a certain age, you can't be arsed of it. Whether it's a thing about not wanting to hurt us or having respect, you know what? I don't know. I really don't know.
Couldn't you all come up with the music and then give it to him, and he comes up with the lyrics and the melodies? Like, does he even need to be involved in the actual mechanics of writing?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah. So maybe it is that. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, or maybe he just didn't like what we do or something. I don't know. You know, it's. I'm trying to be very diplomatic here. I don't know, but I just don't. It's hard, you know, because it's somewhat speculates. I really don't know. I mean, what do I really think deep down? Yeah, I just don't think he can be arsed working with us. Maybe it bothered me at the time, and then after that, I don't think, I started to think, and I remember talking to Paul and saying, even if everyone's agreed on doing an album, if you're not in a perfect place, I think it's a disaster. It's a recipe for disaster.
Okay, go back again to the very beginning. Tell me about how you came to be a part of the band.
Right, I was at school and we'd try to form a band. I'd had a bad injury to my hand, so I had to give up playing guitar. So I bought a drum kit, but I hadn't learned how to play it. And there was a girl in my class called Bev, who'd come from a military family in Germany. She had an older sister called Denise, who was about 5 years older, who was marrying a lad called Shaun, and I'd seen him around. She remember Shaun with bleached hair and having they looked like these Bowie kind of kids, you know, they stood out. And I'd met Paul years earlier, very briefly, because I had friends who went to his school. And Paul was a couple of years older than me. Shaun was about 5 years older. And then there's a lad in my class called Nigel Day, and he had an older brother called Mark Day, who was 5 years older, who was also in a band. And they were both saying they need a drummer, come and join this band. And I thought, it can't be the same band, because Shaun was this kind of Bowie type thing, and Mark was into heavy metal, Queen, so they can't be in the same band. So it confused me. So they said, oh, it's coming down to rehearsals. And when it eventually went down, there he was, Mark and Shaun in the same room. And I went in, and Paul was very quiet, but it was obvious that he was kind of directing everything and sussing me out, and especially what I was wearing. And then I think we went for a drink afterwards. Then the second rehearsal, me and Paul got talking about Echo and the Bunnymen and really hit off, and it was just, we got on from that day one, and that was it.
Did you have any idea when you were walking into that room that day that it would change your life as it did? Like, do you have any sense of this is something really big that's going to be?
No, not at all. No, never. None of us believed anything like that. I think Paul was the only one that ever thought that.
Really? So it was all a big surprise to you when things actually started to fall into place.
Yeah, even then I didn't take it, and I think that was frustrating for Paul as well. We didn't take it as serious.
Talk about the days of rehearsing in Mark's mum's loft.
I don't think we did that many there, you know. We probably only did about 5 or 6 there. It was a tiny loft in a terraced house. I used to go in and they had a piano. It was a terraced house, but the room was so small. They had the piano nailed up against the wall, so you could get past. It was off the wall. It was funny because we had a piano in our house, and Paul and Shaun had a piano in their house. It's really weird. So everyone had a piano in our house. My sister used to play piano, my older sister. And it was they used to pull the ladders down and go up, and it was this tiny room. It was there. It was Nigel's room. They used to have a stair. It was tiny. But I think we only did about 5 or 6 rehearsals. We didn't do many rehearsals there.
Were you allowed to smoke and drink and things like when you were younger?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Smoke and drank everywhere. Though Paul did, ironically, Paul didn't smoke then. I didn't either.
Tell me why he said he didn't smoke.
Yeah, so we was in the Morning Star, the pub we used to go in after rehearsals, and I was 15, 16, and Paul was 18, and most people smoked. I remember Shaun smoked number 6, and I remember saying to Paul, "How come you don't smoke?" And he said, "Oh, that to and fro with the arm just seems like too much exercise." Yeah, because you know he's never broke a sweat in his life. He drove everywhere. I've never seen him walk far. I mean, the furthest I've ever seen him walk is the furthest he'd park away from where we were. You know, he drove everywhere.
It's true.
Wouldn't walk anywhere, drove everywhere.
And even when he was like 18, was he the same?
Yeah.
Because he used to play rugby when he was at school. He was really good at rugby, so he must have been pretty fit at that point. No?
Really?
Apparently.
I never knew that.
Yeah, he was really good at rugby.
Really?
Yeah. But this was when he was at school, not when he was in the band.
I never knew that. I never knew he played rugby.
Yeah?
I'd never seen him walk on grass.
Tell me about the first song that you wrote.
What was that one? Oh, I don't know. But maybe one called Red, or Weekend Starts Here, or some Red, I think. We used to do a couple of Joy Division covers and a Depeche Mode one. Then we did a couple of our own. Quite poppy, actually. I mean, but kind of. But all the early songs are bass driven. I mean, I'm not saying all these things because it's about Paul, but it's true. They were all bass driven. But then again, New Order was bass, you know, and Joy Division were bass driven. Them kind of bands, some of the bands that we liked then, and the Echo and the Bunnymen were bass driven, you know. So I can't remember what it was called. Maybe Red, a song called Red, I think, or what was the other one called? Comfort and Joy. That's some weird ones, yeah.
So were you in the band when there was Matt Carroll around, or had he already gone by the time you joined?
Well, Matt's not officially left yet, has he? He's never been told. Never been told. No, he'd left then. Yeah, it was just Paul, Shaun, and Mark. About a year in, PD started coming to rehearsals, but he wanted to be and then announced he wanted to be the bass player. And then Shaun said, "You can't. Our kid's a bass player." I remember the rehearsal, and then PD said, "Well, I want to be the drummer." He said, "You can't get a drummer." He said, "Well," so I said, "You can be the keyboard player. I haven't got a keyboard player." And PD was like, "No, that's for weirdos." So as he got a keyboard player, he had like a little Casio keyboard. It was that big, and Derek built him a big a keyboard stand which was twice the size of the keyboard. But when PD came and he couldn't really play, he learned to play as we went on the fly, which a lot of people did in the 80s. You know, Depeche Mode thing. It was all that one finger thing. He changed the sound of the band. He really did. He had a big influence, PD. No, you know, maybe he didn't realise he did, but we kind of changed. You know, it kind of changed the style of it. You know.
Okay, so you rose from the ranks of Mark's loft to rehearsing in a school. Tell me about the school that you used to.
Well, it was all St. School. It was a school I'd learned to read and writing, ironically. The very room I'd learned to read and writing, and right near where the desk player was when I was 4 or 5 was where my drum kit was set up, where we first started the band, which is really weird. It was an old church school. And Mark's neighbour was the cleaner. That's how we had the keys and used to rent it off her.
Now, Paul tells a story about a record company executive coming to watch you. Tell me about that incident?
So Paul used to send these cassettes off to all the record companies. Always Paul did all that and info. And then some record label got back in touch. London Records it was, ironically. Was it the publishing? No, it was London because we went with the publishing in the end, London. And they said they're going to come up. And one of the head of A&R, I can't remember his name, Derek knew him because he'd signed, I think Paul had sent it to him because he'd signed a few bands from Manchester. So they arranged to come up. And it was an old school, it was like an old church, it had a big bay window. So we'd set up playing. And they turned up and they were from down south and they were always a bit nervous coming up north anyway. And it was in an area that was okay, it wasn't a bad area or anything, but they packed up and said, the car's okay outside. We're like, yeah, it's fine. It was a fine area, it wasn't a bad area or anything. And they came in and literally, halfway through the first song, a brick came through the gable end window. And I think it was an old girlfriend of mine, I'm not sure, because she used to hang around there, we'd fallen out. And they all dived on the floor like we were under attack. And we said, it's fine, we got up and and they went and checked the cars and they came back and they said, does that normally happen? And Derek said, yeah, but they must be getting good. So they said, why? He said, because it was only half a brick this time, something ridiculous, something stupid like that. We were all laughing, but they were scared to death. And then they said to us, we'll sign you if you get an image. And we was like, well, this is how we dress. They said, no, you've got to have an image, like Culture Club. We all just went, oh, fuck off. And then they got in touch about 2 weeks later and said they'd sign us on a deal if we changed our image and got a stylist, and we all just categorically just said no chance. The clothes were important as the music for us then, and I'm glad we stuck by that.
Wow, that's incredible. I didn't know, Paul didn't say that. I didn't know that you'd actually been offered a deal by them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how good a deal it was, but they said we're not happy to go to negotiations if...
On condition that you got a stylist. I mean,
and they were talking like Culture Club and all that, yeah.
What on earth would they have dressed you up as?
Duran. But that was it, and we all just said no straight away, no. I mean, it was kind of a surprise that anyone took any interest in us, so it wasn't any big deal, it wasn't like we'd been knocked back loads of times, so we were just like, no, absolutely not, no.
Amazing, I didn't know that at all. That's bonkers. Okay, tell me about your first gig. We've spoken to Jason about it and we've spoken to Kingo about it. So there's a lot of talk about this first gig. Tell me about it from your perspective.
Apparently, someone went in Kingo's Barbers this week. He said, doing podcasts, they're calling me from LA now. He said, I'm going to have to get some merch together. It's great, isn't it? It was at the Walder Community Centre, and ironically, it was a place where I'd gone in as a nursery. I'd gone nursery in that room, which is really weird. So it's really, really strange. And it was a Thursday night, and we did 3 Joy Division songs, 1 Depeche Mode song, and 2 of our own. One song called Saigon. We was obsessed by Vietnam, and this was this TV show on late at night. And we did a song about Vietnam, which we really liked, but Shaun hated it. And his lyrics were brilliant, but he hated it, so we never did it again. So we did that. And it kind of just passed everyone by. The people just went, all the local kids came and watched it. It was like, oh, all right, I think, it was the height of Duran and pop music rather than kind of, I don't think most people had heard of Joy Division around there. So the people weren't impressed. So it was kind of just nothing of a gig, but we just to get a gig under our belt, it was fun, it was brilliant. And then that's when PD joined afterwards, because we went outside and he wouldn't let anybody near us to talk to us. We said we've got to get him in the band. So yeah, it was like a 20-minute set.
He wouldn't let anyone near you?
No, my band. So I don't remember it, but everyone was saying it. Everybody was going, it's my band, keep away, keep away. I don't remember that, but that's what everyone else says happened. So someone said, you've got to get him in the band. So that night, we went to the pub afterwards and asked him to join the band. I don't remember him doing that, but everyone said, even Matt, everyone says that's what he did. I can't remember, so...
Because he was protecting you. He was being protective of
Yeah.
Brilliant. Maybe he wanted to be your manager at the time.
No, I think he wanted to be in the band.
Oh, did he? Brilliant. Okay, so tell me about the recording of the very first single. You did a single first. Was it with Mike Pickering?
Mike Pickering in Bury, and we had a few songs. There was one called, I can't remember, Delightful, which is like a pop. We had about 5 songs, and Mike Pick chose 3, Delightful, Oasis, and This feels like, I think...
Yeah, did Bernard Sumner produce one of them as well?
He did Freaky Dancing. It was great, first time in the studio. It was just one day in Bury, we recorded them 3 songs. Oasis was a song we liked, but Factory chose delightful. It wasn't very different than what was out at the time. Kind of came and went with a whimper, you know, it wasn't... But, you know, but at least we'd started, you know.
Okay, and then tell me about when you were in the studio with John Cale.
John Cale. So me and Phil Sachs had seen John Cale at the Hacienda, and we loved him. We all loved the Velvet Underground, but me and Phil were John Cale fans, where the rest were more Lou Reed. And we liked his solo stuff. Paul hated his solo stuff, and John, they all hated his solo, but me and Phil loved it. And we went to see him at the Hacienda, and then Phil, I think Tony Wilson might have been there, got into Tony Wilson, said, "Oh, I've got to go with John Cale," and he produced, I can't remember who else he produced a few people. And I think Iggy Pop and a few, I can't remember, I could be wrong, can't remember. So we agreed to do it, and it was just all we were bothered about. We had 3 weeks in London paid for. We were in this bed-sitting near Swiss Cottage, something park it was called, I can't remember what it was called. With a load of Geordie builders. We used to go back at night and just drink with them till the early hours. And we used to walk from Swiss Cottage, Belsize Park we stayed. We just cut through Swiss Cottage, Belsize Park to... It was next to the Town and Country Club. Remember the Town and Country Club in Kentish Town? It was right next door to there. And we used to walk there every day, and it was like a community studio. And John Cale was in there, and he was going through a clean period. He was eating clementines all day and extra strong mints, and we were just getting started, drinking, drug taking, and smoking. You know, so it was a clash from the start. He didn't get us. I mean, classically trained. We recorded everything, and he said that's it. And then we went the next day, and he said, "Oh, let's start again." We didn't really have much contact with him. Didn't really get on with him that much. Didn't really have a lot of. He said I think he was a bit. Yeah, we didn't really make a lot of connection with him really. He just kind of acted as engineer. Yeah, it was not. That was kind of. Yeah, a bit disappointing really.
What do you think of the work that he did though?
Probably good for what he could get out of us. He was good. He was just probably us. They weren't the easiest to work with. And he just did. And Dave Young, who was his engineer, who we worked with, who ended up doing, I think, 24-hour party people, just didn't really understand us, didn't get it. Because he was saying, I remember him saying to us, the bass and drums are like really slow grooving and dragging it back. Is that because you don't know what you do? No, is it on purpose? And we was like, well, it's kind of like we were kind of doing stone disco. And he was like, but you're an indie band, and we were like, well, we don't see ourselves as an indie band. And they didn't get that. We wanted to be this kind of like Velvet Underground funk band, if that makes sense.
Bummed. Let's go on to Bummed. So that was a different kettle of fish to John Cale, wasn't it? Working with Martin Hannett.
So we hadn't met Martin Hannett. So Martin Hannett was a bass player. So we wanted me and Paul to go up first to the studio. We booked in a studio called the Slaughterhouse in Driffield near Scarborough, North Yorkshire. So we had to pick him up, Factory hired a car, and they said the only request from Martin Hannett was no Ford or no red car, because he hated red Fords. So of course me and Paul requested a red Ford and got one. We pulled up at his house in Charlton, Martin was outside smoking, and he just went, "Yeah, pair of bastards. We're going to get on fine." And we did. We got to Driffield, and the pubs were open. This was before the times when pubs were open all day. And the pubs were open all day. So we get to the studio, and the guys, we said, "Why?" He said, "Do you want to have a look around the new studio?" And we were like, "No, why the pub's open all day?" And he said, "It's market day, they're open all day." We were like, "All day?" He went, "Yeah." We went, "We'll go to the pub then." He said, "Well, do you want to tour around the studio and see what equipment we've got?" And we went, "No." So we get to the pub, and Martin said, "I've not drank alcohol for 5 years, 4 or 5 years, can't remember at the time what it was." He said, I've not drank, I'll just have a Coca-Cola." Okay. I remember Paul saying, "They've got a Stella on draft." So we ordered 2 pints of Stella, and Martin went, "Go on then, I'll have a Stella." So we had one. This was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Still there at 12:30 at night, midnight. We just drank right through. And the next day, and that became, we used to go there for breakfast. It was right next to the studio. We used to go there for breakfast every day, the beginning and the end. And then it was great bum because it was in this little studio. Martin Hannett didn't know, he hadn't been in a studio for years. It'd been kind of semi-digital. And the young boffin kid there was like, "This bloke doesn't know what he's doing." And we were like, and we were unsure whether he'd cut it anymore, you know, because things had changed. And And then about 5 days in, the guy in the studio went, yeah, he knows what he's doing. He's brilliant, but he's out of touch with all with technology. And we had a back room where we had a little sound system, a little ghetto blasters, and we had dance music from the Hacienda cassettes and the DJs from Mike Bick just on. It was on 24 hours a day on loop, and there was a party going on in there all the time for like weeks, and you'd go in and out and go in and out, and that was it. And then, but the music was nothing like that. But that's what I remember from it. And people coming up from Manchester, and see people from Manchester around this little farming village. It was quite funny. I enjoyed Bum was a really good time. Really good time.
Yeah. And how was Paul during that time?
That was the Ecstasy album of all things, so everyone was in really good mood. Everyone was getting along. Everything was really pleasant. It was really pleasure.
When you say the Ecstasy album, do you mean that you were all doing Ecstasy, or just that was the era?
We were all doing Ecstasy. It was starting to be the era, yeah. But it was just a really good. And we should, like, if you had a bit of time off, we'd drive the 2-3 hours back to Manchester to the Hacienda for the night, then drive back up. And with a few people and back, it was just a really good vibe. It was just a really good time. That was some of the best times, that Bummed album.
And then the album was a big hit, wasn't it? That kind of launched it. What point did you feel like, oh, actually, this is working now? We're actually making strides. Like, where did you feel like you being?
Probably 24 Hour Party People, a single that maybe after Tart Tart Party People, that kind of got. And Tart Tart was played on the chart show on a Sunday morning, and it got to number 1 in the indie charts. Indie charts was like kind of a big thing then. So that was when we started to gain people coming to the gigs. I mean, the first places we had an audience were London, Blackburn and Leeds. We couldn't get arrested in Manchester. Us and the Stone Roses couldn't get arrested. We're hated in Manchester. It was all that jingly jangly pop, and they hated us. The Manchester press, Manchester radio station, they all hated us, yeah.
And what changed that then?
Tony the Greek was playing some of our stuff. John Peel's session was really good. That got us, that helped a lot. John Peel's session was really good. Yeah, Tony the Greek was one of the few people in Manchester. He had a radio show at night time. I think it might have been on Piccadilly. He was one of the few he was like the kind of Manchester kind of John Peel. He was the first one that used to play us and the Stone Roses.
But wasn't he also your press officer as well?
I don't know, he might have been. We had no idea. We didn't take it. I don't know, was it? Yeah.
There was this really brilliant, on YouTube, there's a schools programme, and it's hilarious. Like, it's for schools, and it's about the mechanics of the business, of the music business, through the eyes of the Happy Mondays and their crew. And there's a great bit of Tony.
I've seen that bit. That's the bit I've seen. Tony Wilson talking.
Tony the Greek is saying, I think it's Tony. One of them's saying they can't carry on not turning up for interviews, and being unprofessional like this. And Tony Wilson says, well, to be honest, I quite like that. And it just
that sounds like Tony Wilson. Yeah,
brilliant. But the fact that it was part of a schools programme just was amazing to me.
I know, it's hilarious. I've seen clips of it. I know, I can't watch it. It's hilarious, isn't it? Yeah.
Why can you not watch it?
I can't. I can never watch anything of ourselves. I can never watch.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you remember? Paul talked about how significant it was that suddenly MTV were taking the band seriously. Do you remember that being a thing? Like being excited about being on MTV? No.
No.
Do you remember it being he said that the first time you were on TV was on The Other Side of Midnight. No, it was on the chart show, but the first TV you actually performed in was The Other Side of Midnight. Do you remember being excited about that?
Yeah, that was brilliant. That was a Sunday afternoon as well. That was a full all-day Sunday. Yeah, really, but nervous, yeah. I enjoyed. That was a great day as well, yeah. I remember that, yeah.
And that was literally because Tony was the presenter and he also ran the record label and Yeah. Did you feel then that you'd made it? Like, what was the point where you thought, oh, we've made it now?
Because like you say, I think Tony introduces us by saying, what does he say, something like, this isn't nepotism, it's pure devotion to the cause or something. I'm paraphrasing, but something like that. So no, we just thought we got on it because it was Tony, it was factory, So no, not really. I remember the first time I thought, we kind of made it. We was in the van going down to Brighton. I think Hallelujah just got in the charts. Remember they used to countdown on a Sunday night, the chart show, and we arrived there and there was people outside the venue waiting to see us, Then we got in, and the venue people were like, "What can we get you? What can we get you? Do you need anything?" And usually it's like, you had to hassle for anything, and then suddenly it was like all of a sudden, what can we get? They wanted to, and I remember that distinctly. It was a Sunday night in Brighton.
Yeah, tell me about the day that you did Top of the Pops with the Roses.
So we got there. We didn't really know the Roses that well. They kept us apart in town. They were kind of from a different. We used to see Manny would come in the Hacienda sometimes. We didn't really know him that well. We met him as we arrived there. They were on stage doing their run through. And we walked in and we'd both gone to Richard Crem, or Dick Cream as we called him, Richard Crem, to get our kitted out. And he'd give us all these designer clothes. I'd got this black Gaultier top that zips up, and Ian had the red version exactly the same. We walked in and we just went, "Oh no, yeah." And then we met him in the bar and had a drink, and we got on with him really well. And I just that was really nervous. I was disappointed because we thought the BBC bar, I thought it'd be full of like, Nazis and Nazi soldiers and Roman soldiers and, people dressed as cowboys and Indians, and all that. And he was just a load of office staff. It was really boring. And we did it all because I remember we couldn't hear it, the playback, the playback on stage, having to mime, and really, because you wouldn't grow up watching Top of the Pops since you was a kid, and I was scared to death, really, really petrified. And I think Paul, well, we all were, we was all petrified, I think. And
how can you mime the drums if you can't hear what's going on in your ear?
Well, yeah, if you watch it and it starts off with the drums, it starts off and you can see like everyone's a little bit, it's hard, and when you look back. And with experience, no one cares, no one sees, no one's looking, no one really bothers. But at the moment you think you're the centre of not you yourself, but what you're doing is exposed to everything, you know what I mean? And you're like, and then I remember we stayed behind afterwards, and then Tina Turner was on doing a pre-record for the next show. And me and Paul all said, we've got to go and see Tina Turner. Tina Turner, I can Tina Turner, I've got to go and see her. And we walked out and Paul went for a cig and it got locked out, we lost him. So probably just walking slow behind, he's like. And me and Ian Brown went in and watched her do this thing here, and she walked past and Ian Brown went, "Yes, Tina." And she went, "Oh, you English boys." And I remember something like that. He says he said something else, but I think that's what she said. And Paul was really gutted and annoyed at us. He thought we'd left him on purpose. And that's all I remember. It was just a great day, but really, really nervous and scary day, That's probably the most nervous I've ever been in my life.
I was talking about this to Manny earlier, how there was no bitterness or rivalry at all between you and the Roses. Like, that's kind of quite incredible, really, when you think about it. Like, you really could have been pitted against each other, couldn't you?
Well, when we got there, we met him in the bar and had a drink, and we said, no one really knows who we are. So me and Manny were going to swap places. In fact, for the next rehearsal, I went up to play bass, and Manny was going to play drums. And because we thought they wouldn't know the bass player and drummer, they're not going to know the difference. And I actually think I got his guitar on Mick, and Manny might, or he might say, I can't remember a long time. One of us actually got on stage. I think it might have been me because they were rehearsing before. And someone had heard and said to the producer, they hadn't even noticed the producer, and they said, "If you do this, you'll never be on telly again." So we're like,
recording Pills and Thrills. Tell me about LA.
Oh wow! I remember we arrived. Was it? He always remember where we stayed, Paul. I think it was Pasadena way. Was it Pasadena way?
Burbank, that was it.
But it's the other side of LA to Hollywood, isn't it? So we used to drive there every day. And I remember arriving the first day, and there's a traffic jam leading off the motorway, and there's someone up front arguing with these builders, and there was a big fight. We pulled off, eventually get to the studio, and then half an hour later, Bez comes running in. I had the car, just got into a fight on the motorway. Like, Christ, I've only been here a day. And Thingy had been in the studio. I said to the guy who'd been in the studio before, and he said, Whitney Houston had been in. And I said, "Oh, that must have been boring, Whitney, because she was like this." And he went, "Oh no, it was great." And we told us all these stories, and we were like, "No, we thought he was being sarcastic." How little did we know. And that was a good atmosphere as well. We stayed at the But I remember being at what was them apartments called again?
Oakwood Apartments.
Paul got married there as well, and Bez, he had to come in to get me and PD, and Bez went to the wrong block and knocked on the wrong door. We came out, me and PD, and they'd gone. But I remember leaving one day, he was in the jacuzzi, which is at ground level. He said, "Have you got a light, Gaz?" I went, "No," and I'd been out all day, come back, and he went, "Have you got a light?" I went, your room's there if you don't get out. He went, nah, just be getting lights off people going past. And he literally delayed, he must have been in the jacuzzi for 8-10 hours.
How do you get on with Paul Oakenfold and Steve Osbourne?
Well, Paul Oakenfold's nice. Steve Osbourne was like the tall, skinny guy. He had like big eyes and like a nervous twitch, and because he had these big eyes, Paul called him Yikes. Paul nicknamed him Yikes. And it's funny because Paul would say, "Oh, yikes!" And I knew what he meant straight away. And I'd just cry, like, you know, you knew with his.
Did he have a name for Paul Oakenfold?
We didn't actually. No, we didn't. He had. Yeah, I remember he turned up in. He had a car. He had a red Mustang convertible. We was all like, "You fucking cockney, of course you have." You know what I mean? But he was lovely. He was really, really sweet, Paul Oakenfold. We'll say really sweet. We didn't have a nickname for him actually. It's funny, he was one of the few people who didn't. We didn't have a nickname for him. No, we didn't. But he was lovely, Paul Oakenfold. He was really, and he shot. Paul got on with him really well because he knew his old funk records and soul records. So Paul got on with him really well. And he used to have a booth and he used to play records. We got on. Oaken was lovely. Really nice bloke.
Yeah. And what do you think of what he did to the music? Like, how much of an influence would you credit him?
A lot. I mean, he was. Steve Osbourne did all the technical stuff, but Oakenfold would play records and say, listen to this groove, this is that, and he got, and what he did, like God's Cop, that drum groove, was really, Oakenfold was playing with these old soul records. But I say it was perfect for Paul, because the songs that Paul knew or liked or didn't know they were old ones, so we got on with him really well. I think a massive influence on that album. I'd say at the time, I didn't think he did, and we kind of give all the credit to Osbourne, but looking back, Oakenfold had a massive influence on it. And I think it was Bez's idea to get Oakenfold and get a DJ, because Bez had been out in a beef and said, the DJs, they're producing dance records, I don't know why they shouldn't produce bands. I'm sure it was an off-the-cuff comment by Bez.
Really? How?
Yeah.
So, any memories of any nights out, particularly any antics that you and Paul got up to when you were in LA?
You all the gossip, don't you? I remember. I remember with Soul to Soul were playing at. It wasn't the Hollywood Bowl. It was another place. No, it was indoors. A bigger arena. So we turned up there, and I don't know what we'd had. We'd had something. I can't remember what it was. What had we had? What had we taken? Taken something. And we turned up there, and it was like we got on the guest list through the record label in America. And obviously 7 of us, all off our nut and drunk, and we turn up, and obviously it's America. Soul to Soul were the only white people in the audience. And we're like halfway up at the back, and about 3 songs in, we're all just like dancing off our head, and the crowd are turning, looking at us. And then someone from Soul to Soul points up to the singers, and he's like, they're getting like, you know, and like they're looking at us, people are looking at us, and then they're back watching the band, you know, and all that. And then afterwards, there was a party at the hotel. We got there, and Jazzy B wouldn't let us in. One of the dancers was from Manchester. From what side he said, you can't let it in. You ruined the show.
Ruined the show? Why?
Because people were fascinated by these 7 white limeys dancing in the middle of the audience. The first week we got there, midweek, because we were staying at the Roosevelt on Hollywood Boulevard. It's Hollywood Boulevard. Literally on the corner. And it's a bit tacky. The hotel was great, but the place was tacky. And Paul took me to it might have been the Ritz around the corner to see the Chili Peppers. I hadn't seen the Chili Peppers. I'd never seen them before. And they were just, I think they might have Blood Sugar Magic out. It was early, it was 1990. And he said, you love this. And they blew me away. They were just mind-blowing. I remember Paul got me into them. He'd arranged tickets or passes, guests to go in. So I think the second night there, I was like, oh, I don't want to go. He went, no, you've got to come and watch him. To influence the album, yeah. So I remember that, yeah.
And tell me about Paul's wedding in Calabasas.
Well, I didn't go, did I? Because we was waiting to go. So we was ready to leave to go up to the hills to get married in Calabasas. We didn't know. And me and PD were in a room. So they said, we'll come up and knock on the door. We're ready to leave. So me and PD sat there like, no one's come. So we walked down like half an hour later. They'd gone. Then later he said, we knocked on your door. He didn't answer. So Paul was a bit upset, obviously. And then about a year later, we talked about it. He sent Bez up. He sent Bez up to come and get us. And Bez went, yeah, you were in the first block right there. We went, no, we were in the second block. He's knocking on the wrong door, weren't he?
So you missed the wedding?
But yeah, because Bez thought it was funny. But at least Paul knew it wasn't.
Did you not even go to the party afterwards?
Yeah, because it was round the pool. Paul was in the hot tub all night.
Oh, right, that was when he was in the hot tub. Right, okay. Yeah. Talk about being on tour and what Paul was like in those days when you were on tour.
He was always stressing to make sure everything was right, and a bit annoyed at us all not taking it too serious. He used to take it really serious, always. But you have to have one of them in the band like that, you know, you have to. And he used to get stressed that we all didn't take it too serious. So he used to be stressed a lot. Not stressed as in, you know, he wasn't kicking off or getting angry, but you could see, you get the disappointment stare off him, you know, the disappointment look.
Oh, really? What was that?
You could see he'd get stressed about how things were. He was always asking questions about the venue, or, you know, about, he used to get stressed. At the time, so I didn't realise this is with hindsight. I didn't take much notice of it, you know, I was younger and drinking too much.
Now we need to talk about Barbados and that whole debacle. Now, Paul had very fond memories of Barbados, said it was great, loved Chris and Tina, and basically said the only issue was Shaun not really being able to produce his lyrics. But other than that, and he really loved that album as well. I don't know how, do you agree with that? Was it the same for you? Or?
Yeah. 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 I mean, Paul was ill though. The first week we got there, Paul was really ill, having really bad stomach pains. And they took him to the hospital, got him checked and all that, and it turned out later that I think it happened years later, and they said it was anxiety. We had really bad stomach, really, we thought he had appendicitis.
Didn't he have pancreatitis for a while? I think he'd had a...
Oh, did he actually have that? Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
I vaguely remember. I mean, he was a bit of a hypochondriac sometimes, wasn't he? So you never quite knew.
Don't know, I am, so I don't know.
Proper pair, the two of you.
Proper pair, yeah. I have fond memories of it. I got there the first week, so we were in with Chris and Tina doing it the first week, so we didn't see all the madness. And then the first day we hired a car, and me and Paul just drove around the island. And then we started recording. So we weren't privy to it all the first week. We were stuck in the studio.
Right. And what was it like for you? What was your perception of the whole time there?
The old trip. It was fine at first. Then Vanessa came over. We rented a house in the middle of Barbados. Then we used to drive in and check every day. And I could see it was getting a bit nuts each day, you know, with cars upside down. And it was a bit nuts. And like locals walking around dressed like they were from Salford. And it was very, very weird. And it was... the best was one day we'd gone in the studio. And outside the studio was a swimming pool on a higher level. Bez was already in the hospital because he'd turned the Jeep over and smashed his arm in. And I went, and someone said, come have a look at this. And we went outside to the swimming pool and they'd made a crack den out of the sun loungers. Like a proper crack den. Just smoke coming out of the sun loungers. And the distance was this Jeep turned upside down that Bez had left, and the rental company couldn't go and get it because it was in the middle of the jungle, you know. But I had fond memories of it. But I kind of resigned myself to the fact that it was over. You know, it was over the band, so I just thought, you know. But yeah, my favourite album as well. I think Shaun's the only one who don't like that album. I think it's Bez's favourite album, Rowetta's, Paul's mine, yeah. I don't know about Mark, but yeah.
No, I really like that album too. I mean, I didn't like the tracks so much that didn't have lyrics on them. I think that...
I think some of his best lyrics as well. I don't know. There's only one song that didn't end up with vocals on, isn't there?
Sunshine and Love is my favourite Mondays song. You know, you like that one as well, don't you?
I wanted that to be the single, and I was outvoted by Shaun and Paul, actually, outvoted because I wanted that as the first single. And then when that came out, it's when Factory lost their distribution deal. So it's stuck in the warehouse on the shelf. So that messes up. Yeah.
So one of Paul's big bugbears was that the Mondays got blamed for Factory going under, and he says it wasn't the Mondays. Can you back that up too?
Yeah, it's not true. I mean, we kind of got pushed to go and do that album, even though we'd only half written it, because I don't think New Order had done an album for a while, so they relied on New Order and us for a little bit of funding because they'd signed all these bands, so we were pushed into it. When we actually split up, Factory owed us money. When the Factory went bankrupt, they owed us money. So it was quite the opposite. And the album didn't cost a lot to do. People think it was Barbados, it cost a lot of money. It didn't. The studio was cheap. The flights were cheap. It was like, it wasn't that... Because we got a choice. They said to us, Manchester, Amsterdam or Barbados. So Manchester was out, never got anything done. Amsterdam, can you imagine? Still been there, wouldn't we? Yeah, let's do Barbados. Little did we know. But no, we had a good time. I have nothing but pleasant memories from it.
Paul wasn't doing heroin at that point, was he? Or was he? Had he just started?
Right, this is what I think, just before we went, I'd caught him, we'd rehearsed a New Orders place in Cheetham Hill, and it's the one and only time I ever saw him do it, the first time he did it. I just said, oh, you dick, and he went, and he was like, and we spoke about that since. They said he was embarrassed, but obviously once he'd had it, he wasn't embarrassed. And I think he'd been dabbling before then. I could be wrong though. And I thought the stomach pains might have been something to do. But I don't know. I can't base it on anything. All the gut instinct.
It probably was. Well, he says that he first picked up heroin when he found out that Alison had cheated, which would be a year after he got married, which would be, he got married in the summer of 1990. So that would have been like the summer of 91. When was Yes Please?
Was it 92? January 92? Was it 93? 92.
So he was already using then at that point?
92, yeah. Yeah, oh, there you go then, yeah. So you're right then, yeah. Yeah, so that was my gut instinct, so yeah, so that would be right then, yeah. Yeah, that would make sense.
So tell me what it felt like to be really, to witness your best friend just spiralling into the depths of despair and addiction and going from being great to being terrible. What was that like?
Yeah, it was gut-wrenching. Yeah, that's the thing as well. I think it might have been the Alison thing, and I think maybe, and this is just my opinion, I think that was an excuse. I think he was using it because he could see the demise of his dream ending in the band, and he'd lost control, and also that we all knew it was ending, but obviously he took it a lot worse than all. We all took it quite bad, but he took it. I always thought it was an excuse. I could be wrong,
No, I think you're right. I think you're right, definitely. I think it was probably always only a matter of time before he picked it up. Yeah,
and it was really, really sad, disappointing, because I knew as well, not only was it my best mate I was losing, but also that from a selfish point of view, I knew that was definitely the end of the band. You know what I mean? If Paul wasn't functioning, it wasn't happening. And he knew that I knew that he knew that I knew that I knew that he knew.
Right. And how did you cope with that? How did you relate to him once he'd started using? How did you deal with it?
I just started. Well, I pretty much just used to drink more, so drinking was my thing. And it's funny because I was saying like last time we spoke, that we both ended up in Meadowbrook. Mine was only a day thing. I only went. He was in there like proper sectioned. I only went one for a day. Mine wasn't really like his, and mine ended up being because a malaria tablet I'd taken.
But did you say to him, "What are you doing?" Did you actually articulate how you were feeling?
Yeah, but you know what? You can't tell. You don't care. He used to lie to me, and I used to go, "I know you're lying." And he knew that I knew he was lying, and you knew that I knew that I knew that he knew that he was like, But yeah, but we just kind of just. But I knew why he was doing it, why he was dealing with it, and we're all kind of doing our own things. We had our own friends by then, all doing different things anyway.
So tell me about the day that it all ended. That one day. What happened that day?
I don't remember it actually.
Well, was it not the record company meeting when Shaun didn't show up? Wasn't that really when it all fell apart?
No, I think that was one. No, we carried on for a while after that, I think. But it'd been not long after. But it'd been coming. We'd been rehearsing at different times, and I wasn't getting on with Paul then. I think me and Mark would do the day shift. Paul and Shaun would do the night shift. I think. I can't remember. I know it was a bit. It was definitely. We were just doing recording in there, one at a time. And then I remember Paul saying, "Why don't you start at 6?" I said, "Why don't you start at 2?" And no one would agree. No one would budge and give in.
Right. And what were you actually? What were you recording at that point? Because this was after you.
Just demos for a new album.
Do you have any of that material? Do you have any of those songs still?
No, Simon H had it all, so I don't know what happened to it. It was a weird time because we all kind of buried our heads in the sand and was in denial. But we were in denial, but we were in denial with each other. But you know, we all knew it was over. But with each other, we was in denial it was over. And I think since Paul was doing that, then I was going out drinking more. And I met Vanessa, and I'd moved, and we just wasn't. Me and Paul didn't have a relationship anymore either.
And then he had a full-on breakdown, and you were a really good friend to him at that point. You went to see him every day. Like, how was that time for you?
Yeah, it was really sad. I mean, we had a good laugh in the nut house. We had a good, you know, when we went to go and see him, we had a good laugh. Some of the stories he was telling about people, but it was really sad. You know, he didn't seem, you know, he was completely aware why he was there. He wasn't like he was, you know, which was even kind of, you know, more upsetting. But me and Paul struggled to function just on a normal basis for life. You know, he dealt with it with heroin, I dealt with it with alcohol, or both had anxiety, we both struggled to function. So we're very different but very similar. I can't do anything. I really can't do anything. Honestly, I've struggled, I'm just useless at everything. But that's part of, you know, the band doing everything for us as well, you know.
So, you used to go and see him and he'd grown a long James Anderson beard. Did you think he would get out of that? Did you think it was temporary, or were you worried that was it? He was stuck in like a mental health.
Yeah, I thought he wouldn't get out of it. I don't remember him having a beard.
Do you know? He grew a big James Anderson long beard. Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. That's weird. I don't remember that. You've got to have a beard though if you're in them places, haven't you? You got to have a beard and chain smoke.
Do you feel like his breakdown was brought on by losing the band or by being a heroin addict? Like, what do you think was the cause fundamentally?
The band. That's why he was a band. I think the band, and when you're like anxious and not being able to function on a basic level, a band's a great family for you because it's really easy. Things are done for you. You get excuses made for you, you know. And once that ends, you're out in the real world and exposed, and it's you know. But I think he was more open about not being able to function. I tried to pretend I could, but he didn't, and I think I had it better than him.
Did you ever feel like you were on the verge of a breakdown as well, apart from your malaria tablet episode?
Yeah, a few times, yeah. I had a couple of episodes. But then I just think it was his baby, you know what I mean? It was his thing.
In that time, you went to music college.
Living across America, me and Vanessa, I got back, and I said to my mum, I need something to do, so she booked me on that course in uni. So I said to Paul, and she told Linda said, oh, Paul, you do it as well. So we went on this music production course and met him it.
Right, so this was in 98. So there'd been a period of about 5 or 6 years where he was just languishing. He was with Estrella for a while, in and out of using heroin, and then the two of you went on this music production course. Were you then aspiring to maybe do something together again when you were doing that course?
Don't know. I don't know. We just ended up, and we were just being friends again. That was the most important. That was the main thing, and having a laugh together. We both had them little Volvo cars, and we used to drive up there the day. So I remember that was a good time as well. They were good days. No, we were just being friends. We were just being friends again more than anything.
Yeah, he had a white one with lights that came up like that.
He had a white one, I had a blue one, yeah.
So 1999 reformation of the band, right? So you must have been excited about that, or were you worried? Like, what were your feelings around that? You hadn't worked together for 6 years. PD and Mark weren't involved, but it was you, Paul, Shaun, Bez, Rowetta, Wags, and Ben Leach.
I remember being in the studio and recreating all the songs with Ben Leach. Me and Paul sat around the computer with Ben.
Lee Mullen as well was involved, wasn't he?
And Lee Mullen percussion, that's all I remember. I don't really remember anything else about bad times. I remember recreating all the backing tracks, spending a month in the studio just doing that with Ben, with Posh Scouse. I don't remember anything else from that era, to be honest with you. You know what? I don't remember lots of things. Paul remembers everything. I don't remember half the things because Maybe it's just a way of dealing with it and erased it all, but I don't remember. Lots of stuff I don't remember.
Paul tells a very funny story about when you did a gig in Wembley and you said to him after the show, I've done it. Tell me that story.
You can't talk about that these days. I've done it, I wanted to play Wembley. And that's what I... Come on, what did he say? See if it's the same. I can't really remember.
You'd done this gig at Wembley. It was your first ever gig at Wembley. And you went up to Paul and you went, I've done it. And he said, yeah, we finally played Wembley. And you said, no. I finally wore women's underwear on stage for the whole night. Is that right?
Was that the Wembley gig? All right.
Is that how you remember it?
No, I don't remember that, but we were Spinal Tap.
Okay, so when we spoke last, you told a lot of stories about the bad stuff, but also a lot of the good stuff. Thoughts come to you in the interim about memories that have surfaced that you'd buried maybe before, or anything new that's come to mind that you've thought about in the last few months?
No, you know what's weird though? It's funny because we'll be watching something now, but I can't remember. We was at this pictures recently. Vanessa watching, so I can't remember what it was. I can't remember what it was. And something happened, something funny, and we looked at each other, we both went, "Austin, I love that. That's what And this little stuff, so it comes up all the time, and all the time. Even Vanessa says things like, "Oh, Paul, that would have been right with Paul Street," and there's loads of things, and like finding them tracks that he'd done with Eddie and some other tracks and playing them. And I was playing to Vanessa, and she's like, "They're great, Anna." I was like, "They're amazing." And we had these ideas, and we took them, and the band just wouldn't have it. And she's like, "Why not? They're as good as anything." And it started making me think of. Maybe the politics did run deeper than we think. Maybe we weren't being paranoid. I don't know.
I don't think you were being paranoid, were you? Why do you think you're being paranoid? Because there wasn't...
Well, not paranoid, but in bands what it's like. It's dynamics, and you start thinking maybe, maybe the songs just weren't good enough. Maybe because people have and like when you do songs, you have an idea and you've written them, and so other people are not on board with that idea, and that's just, it doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just that they don't think, it's a different perspective, and you start thinking that, and then you start questioning, second guessing yourself, as you say, or question yourself. So maybe we thought, maybe they wasn't, maybe we just convinced ourselves we're all right. And then it's been a long time since I heard them, and they're great. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know.
What were the songs that you found? Can you remember what they were called?
There was one, like there's like a Clash type one, a reggae one, and Paul had called it Guns of Flixton instead of Guns of Brixton. I remember that one, Guns of Flixton.
There wasn't the one with some French talking on, which I've never...
That was really good as well, yeah.
Do you have that?
No, because it was on my old laptop, and that's died. And I thought I had them on, and they're not on a hard drive or anything anywhere. I've looked everywhere for everything. I only found stuff that was on my old emails. That's in emails.
Okay, because I'm trying to assemble everything together so we can release all this unreleased stuff. We're going to release. I'm going to try and get everything, but I think we've probably got an album's worth of material. Actually, at this stage, we've probably got enough for the equivalent of a double album with all the material that I've managed to find. And we're going to be hearing the Guns of Flixton at the end of this episode, so keep listening. Well, let's just start at the very beginning.
All right.
So tell me about the very first time that you met Paul.
Well, actually, the very first time I met him was in the side street up from where I lived, and we used to play cricket and football on this side street between these terraced houses. And there was a lad who went to his school who was about 4 years older than me, a year older than Paul, 3 years older than me, a year older than Paul. And he'd come and he brought a few mates, and he was sat there, and he was just sat on the curb really quiet. We were all playing football, and he didn't. I remember him. I just remember him. I remember it was him, and he didn't say anything. He was playing very cool, like I was very quiet. Well, people think he's very cool. He's very quiet, really, weren't he? Shy of a lot of things rather than really cool. No, he was cool as well, but you know what I mean. And I remember that, but I never really interacted then. But the first time was, I was in the last year of school. The band had started, there was Paul, Shaun, and Mark Day had started this band called Avant Garde. and Shaun was married to this girl Denise, and her younger sister Bev was in my class at school, and Mark Day was in the 5th year and I was the 1st year, but he had a younger brother in my year, and they were both saying to me, our brothers and my sisters are in this band, they want you to come as a drummer. And I said, well, I'm not a drummer, I've just got a drum kit. And I thought, they can't be the same band, because Nigel's older brother was into heavy rock, Mark, and Bev's older sister Denise was this like kind of Bowie-esque thing. She had like dyed orange hair and all this Bowie makeup. So I thought, they can't be the same band. And I'd seen Shaun around with her. I remember Shaun with bleached hair and a blue suit on, and I thought, that can't be the same band as Mark Day, because Mark Day was on motorbikes and into like, with like Queen on his back. He was into, and I thought, it can't be the same band. And they kept persistently asking. I put it off. And then one day, they were rehearsing in the school in the room I learned to read and write in this little church school across the road from where I used to hang out on this park. So curiosity got the better of me, and I walked over, and there was Shaun there, and Mark Day was there, so I'd seen them before. And then I spotted on the other side Paul, and he had a big cardigan on, and he was kind of both them to introduce themselves. Paul would look me in the eye, and he kind of like, all right, he would mumble. And I sat down, and they played the songs, and it was obvious that it was Paul's band, even though he used the quiet one. They were all bassline driven, and I was kind of watching him. Kind of Shaun had all this echo on his voice, and you couldn't really hear what was going on. Mark was off doing all this mad guitar, but the bass lines were really catchy, and he was stood, and he dressed. I remember him looking really smart, and dressed really smart, and I just thought he was really striking to look at. And he kind of looked, and I'm not just saying this, he just looked different than the other two. He just looked very different. Because both of them two Shaun and Mark were fair. I think Shaun had bleached hair, fair, and there's this dark kind of, later on I used to wind him up, call him Omar Sharif and stuff like that. We used to call him all sorts, didn't we? And he was just quite striking. But I was just glued to watching him. Then as the rehearsals finished, kind of Mark packed up and went, and Shaun did. And we just kind of wandered over to each other and started talking. And it was kind of love at first sight. It sounds very strange, but it was. And we just clicked. And then Shaun said, oh, come, I've got your cassette, come back to Nana's and I'll give you the cassette. So I kind of left with Shaun, but all the time leaving now, I was fascinated by Paul. I just found him really intriguing and interesting. And Shaun was a bit like me. I was a bit mouthy in them days, and Shaun was a bit like me, so we were very similar. Even though I was very similar to Paul, I was very shy and quiet and introverted. But to escape me into being introverted, I'd be loud, and so I was a bit like both of them. But what was really weird was I kind of grown. I always had lots of friends through my football and through music. I always had lots of friends. I wasn't a loner, but I always felt very alone and a bit of an outsider in them suburbs. I just thought everybody felt like that. Everyone feels like a bit of a loner and outsider, don't they? And my friends always thought I was a bit weird, and I wasn't. And then I met these two, and all of a sudden I was like, they reminded me of. I felt at home straight away with the two brothers. It was like I'd found two people who were like me, even though they were very different than me. They weren't into football. They didn't hang around with a big group of people, but they seemed very similar. And all of a sudden in that room, I felt like I'd found my two friends. But it became very apparent within a couple of hours that there was one friend who was going to be my real friend. Not because Shaun didn't do anything I didn't get on with. I just kind of was attracted to Paul. It was just something we got on. And by the second rehearsal, we were best mates. By the first time I brought my drums down and played, and nothing to do with bass and drums, we were just best friends. And we both loved Deco and the Bunnymen. And that was it. And they gave me a cassette, the second rehearsal. Cassette in a cigarette box. Deco and the Bunnymen. And we just become... And we had it's funny because me, and Shaun, and later PD, when he joined the band, we had exactly the same sense of humour. Exactly the same. But me and Paul straight away, and he remembered, and maybe because me and Paul's only 2 years older than me, so maybe we had Mark and Shaun are 5 years older, so maybe there was that. And I thought it's really weird that maybe like my mum and Linda, we just clicked. We had our ups and downs like all married couples do. We fell out of it, but I think in all the years, I think we only had 2 arguments, and they were nothing. It was just me being neurotic, we just did. I don't know. It's just a really weird. It was a really weird double act. We were like Derek and Barry. We just did. And it's funny how never forgot things, did he? Anything. I remember once we were in Rill. And we ended up in this, we used to all go for weekends, this club, and there was just some bad cabaret on. And this comedian come on with a weird looking face. Really weird looking and dressed. And I looked at Paul and he went, fucking hell, it's Humphrey Cushion. And no one knew who Humphrey Cushion was. And I just couldn't get my breath for about half an hour. And he looked like Humphrey Cushion. And I remember going, that's just the funniest thing I've ever heard in my fucking... It was the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. And then I remember... like he said, when he had his house in Crumsall, and there was these two old... There was in the post office, these three really old Jewish women with these big glasses. And he said, fucking hell, it's from DMC. And things like that, and he was the funniest person I've ever met in my life. Him and PD, the two funniest people I've ever met in my life. They were just so funny, and that humour, he had that very subtle humour, and we got each other. You know, we'd say things, and me and him would laugh, and the rest of them didn't. And I don't know why, we just had that connection. But you know that, you know, I don't know what it was.
And that carried on through the trajectory of your relationship through the next how many years? 40 years.
40 years. We was always best mates. I mean, Paul were really different in lots of ways, but similar in a lot of ways. In characters, you know, we're very different, but really similar. Even like up to recently with gigs, like, you know, we like to, we'd get off after the gig and go to the hotel, you know, and I mean, Paul wasn't drinking anything, but I like it quiet. I like my perfect night out is in a pub with a bucket of pint, listening to a few people, you know. I don't like crowds and madness, whereas Mark and the rest of them do, you know. Me and Paul don't like that chaos because we both have chaos inside our heads for our mental health issues. So we don't want chaos on the outside. We want calm and serenity. So, you know, we'd be happy to just get away from it. And so we're very similar in that way. I mean, very, very, as you know, very different, but really, really similar. Really similar. A lot more similar than people realise.
Do you feel his presence around you?
Too much, yeah, all the time. I always think like I think I said last time I spoke, it's like now I'm doing this solo work, whenever I'm doing stuff, I'm always thinking he's judging me. I always think, they can't do that. Paul would call that cheesy, or Paul would do that. But that's because, you know, as we joined the band, I was 15, 16, so him and Shaun were the two people who were guiding me in music, you know, and Mark, but them two especially. And especially Paul, because, you know, they taught me how to be very, I don't want to use the word cool because that's wrong, but how to underplay things, how to downplay things. Don't oversell yourself. Don't do the big thing, I'm the greatest, I'm the best, or don't do the obvious. Don't say the obvious. You know, don't play the game so obviously. You know what I mean? And he was really good at that. And it's hard to do these days, you know.
Do you feel that Shaun has done the opposite as things have transpired?
I think times have changed, and I think now you kind of have to. I think it's difficult, and I'm not. Well, you kind of have to, yeah. I think with people like Tony Wilson's ideas of things, or Bob Dylan these days, you wouldn't get a sniffing. Times have changed, and it's a difficult one, that, because, you know, I just think it's different being a frontman. I think you've got to do, and I think, and I'm not copping out there. I just think I've thought about things differently now than I would. And if you'd asked me that a couple of years ago, I probably would have said yeah. But now I think it's just different. I think, you know, I mean, I think there was a bit of friction between me and Paul friction between me and Paul versus Shaun, because Shaun probably felt that me and Paul felt like that, and we probably did back then. We kind of got used to it and kind of warmed to it and accept it now. But we were kind of very old-fashioned in the way of, you know, keep it rock and roll, and it should be about the music and about the art. And Shaun was like, don't be naive, times have changed, and no one's wrong. You know, I think it's just different.
Right.
You know, yeah. I'm not being diplomatic now. I've just thought it through differently. Would I do that now? I don't know. I want to. while I'm doing my own stuff, I want to still do it the old way, and it'll probably be to my detriment. But I know that it's Paul on my shoulder all the time, you know. Don't make a dick of yourself. Don't, you know, because I would, you know, and don't, you know, keep it real. And but yeah, he does musically as well, always. But he always was. It was always, and you can see it in. If you look at any live footage, it's hard. But there's something recent where I throw something in live. I can't something weird on the drums, and straight away I look round to me right, and I just get that glance off him. You know, he wouldn't. He'd just be a look, and I knew the look would be. Or it'd be like, you know, if he didn't, you know, and he was just automatic, and I still do it now. I look to me right all the time, you know, because he was, you know, he was the guy who taught me everything. And I'm not just saying it's the truth, taught me everything musically. He really did.
And what's it feel like now when you do Monday's gigs?
You know, I'm drinking more. I think I've got me in here, so I'm in my own little world, and it's very different. But Monday's gigs for a while have just been like, I enjoy it and I still do it, but it's a job, and it's after the gig and before the gigs where it's really different. Like I said, like on the way home last time, the first gig we got through without Paul, we kind of thought, oh, we got through that okay, that wasn't too bad, it wasn't as bad as I thought. And then on the way home, we all sit in the same place. And Mark usually sits in the front, but for some reason Mark sat where Paul sat. Paul sat at the window, I sat at the door, the gap in between us. And Mark leant over and he was crying. So he put his head on my shoulder and started crying. He went, we never stop anymore for a cig break or for a piss stop, do we? And he was like, and that's when it kind of hit us, upset, you know, rather than, because when you're focused on stage, you kind of, when you're on stage, Paul didn't really communicate, we did our own thing anyway, apart from the odd glance. So that wasn't as hard, it was more before and afterwards. So
when Paul was, just explain why that's significant, because when Paul's on the bus, he's always stopping.
We had to stop every 10 minutes every half an hour for a cigarette so you could have a cig. Which was perfect because I've got this big stone in my bladder like an old woman. So I have to stop for a piss. So we'd stop for a piss smoke stop. So we'd stop every half an hour, but now we're getting home too early. But and it used to piss Mark off that we stopped. And then the one time we didn't, the first time it upset him. And yeah, and it got me. And it's funny because it's hit Mark more than I thought it would, because he's not really got over it that well. I thought Mark would be just like, you know, oh, okay. And he's not.
Do you feel that Shaun it's affected Shaun much? I
don't really see him, so I really don't know.
But when you did when you did the first gig after Paul had died, was Shaun any different? Did he say anything?
It's a long time ago. That was nearly a year ago. Wow. But I know Rowetta did. I know. I can say it's affected her. We all used to kind of keep in our own little bubbles, travelling, and it's kind of brought us together, bizarrely enough.
Right.
I don't know why, but we're more tolerant with each other. You know, even more so. It's definitely had an effect. It's definitely had an effect. So I've noticed it on Rowetta and Mark. I don't know if they've noticed it with me, but definitely with them two, it definitely has.
Yeah.
He wasn't the healthiest man on the planet, Paul, so I always expected to get a phone call saying he's had a heart attack or something, or he's keeled over, and I kind of half expected that sometime. But when it came, it you know, it just seems weird. It's like, it just doesn't seem, you know, it just seems weird. It doesn't seem like, because, you know, it's been part of my life since I was 15, and my job and everything, you know, and he's my best mate, my number one best mate. Yeah. And more than a mate, it was like, I know this is, you know, but it was like, we were like brothers. We were like brothers. I know people say that, it's a cliche, but we really were. We really were like brothers.
He was definitely closer to you than he was his own brother. That's for sure.
I know, but that's the way a lot of the times, isn't it? But we were, I mean, it was right. We could read each other's minds. It was really weird. Really weird.
Give me an example of that.
All the time we'd finish. You know, we'd be walking down the street and someone had walked down. It'd look like we'd just look at each other, and then we'd just say, you know, that's you know, whoever, you know, and then look, just someone, you know, we just not both of us would say it. We look at each other and go, it'd be hilarious, you know. I remember being at Brixton Academy after the game was with Terry Hall, who Paul was friends with us, and what was that? We were talking, the three of us, and something started in the background, some noise, and me and Paul went, "Is it?" I can't remember what it was. It's not, is it? And it wasn't. And Terry Hall went, "What?" And we both said something. I can't remember what it was. The same thing, and he went, and Terry Hall went, "God, you two were thinking exactly the same thing about something that wasn't." And when he went, "That's really bizarre." It's weird because I from the band starting, it was always his band as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. And I think when you become successful, if you're the bass player, it doesn't become your band anymore, you know. And that's just the way it is, you know. And I think that affected him badly. Do you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And he wasn't controlling, but he was his band, and he just kind of led by example and just guidance. He wasn't a tyrant or anything, but as you know, Paul's not a tyrant. He couldn't be bothered for a start, you know. He couldn't be arsed, not the energy to be a tyrant. No, but he kind of lost that kind of the direction of thing. And I think when fame happens, and I don't think he didn't want fame. I think he wanted recognition.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I was going to say recognition. Yeah. And
I think he's got it posthumously, but it's no good. Well, it is good posthumously. It is good because it's about time he got it. It is good, but I wish he'd have got it, you know. And I think, but though he'd been deeply embarrassed about it, you know, wouldn't have been able to deal with it. When he did his big arm stuff, he was great, and he was a great frontman. I remember that. Ironically, the first gig he did at King's Arms in Salford is the first gig I'm doing in a couple of weeks, and I go back, and it's really weird. And I remember walking up the stairs, there's the room upstairs, and he was shaking at the top of the stairs. I said, "No one's judging you, you'll be right." And he went, "I know." I said, "You'll be fine." And as I walked past, I went, "Fucking, how are you going to do that? Fucking singing, everyone looking at you." And he said, and as I walked past, he went, "I heard you." He heard me. I was like, "Fucking hell." I thought, "Oh shit, I shouldn't have put pressure on him," you know what I mean? But he was great. He was great that night. Remember the gig? Remember it? I remember it well.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. No, it was good. And underrated, that band.
I don't think he ever broke a sweat in his life, has he? I mean, I remember when we first used to go to the pub after rehearsals. I was 16 and Paul had been 18. And I just started smoking. Shaun smokes, Mark didn't. And I said to Paul, "Why don't you smoke? Is it because of your asthma?" And he went, "No, all that to and fro for the arm, that's way too much work." And you know, he's like, you know, and then ironically he became this chain smoker, but he just thought, and he was just like, "Oh, too much, you know, too tiring, you know."
So did he change? To go back to the early days, so when you started to become successful or recognised, or when factories started to take you on, did that change him at all? Did it make him more resolute to be successful? Did it make him, like, how did that affect him in terms of his approach?
I think he just wore more aftershave. You know what I mean? Not the pair of them. No, I don't. You know what? I think he was just even more. He was just focused. He was always focused on the band. He was like, he was always kind of very early when we first got to factory. We started doing stuff. I think he was one that took it serious more than anybody else. And I think there's always a little bit of resentment in a band about the one who drives the band. You know, there's that thing in the Beatles where they used to call McCartney Beetlehead, and there's that clip where Ringo says that, you know, me and John would be in the garden in Surrey in the afternoon, have a cup of tea, and the phone would go, and we'd go, "It's him, innit?" You know, we don't. He said it's McCartney getting us in the studio. He said, but without him, we'd never got anywhere. So people in bands complain about that, them kind of people, but you need them. Or the bands don't succeed, so you need them, but they still complain about them. So we used to call him Monday Head. Monday Head, and he was like, so it was like we'd be doing something. Oh, let's go out drinking. We'll go out to the pub. He'd be like, we've got thingy tomorrow. Well, I'll be all fine. And he was quite sensible.
Really?
But then that's why I think he started to drift away from him, you know. And then once you get to a certain level, you know, the press and all that really. And people, you know, don't really want to know about the ins and outs, daily workings of the band or how you write songs or you do. They're more interested in the shenanigans. You know, and I understand that. The same when I watch band, you know, I'm not, and he kind of, I think, one of my best stories, Paul's story was a great one, and I think you were there, actually. I don't know if you were there at this moment, you were there. When we was at Richard Branson's studios?
Yeah.
When we been there?
Yeah.
You and Laura?
Yeah.
Well, it was when we were doing the Rave On EP, Madchester Rave On EP, well, we didn't know it was called that then. And the guy from the Daily Telegraph came down to interview us. And he's what that Tony Wilson liked, because he'd spoke about me and Paul changing music, indie music to dance music rather than talking about anything else. So he liked that, 'cause it's a bit different. And the guy came, and the interview was a Saturday morning at 9:30, and so no one got up. We'd been in the studio till 2, drinking till 6. But Paul said, no, it's a Daily Telegraph, it's a broadsheet, it's pretty, you know, we've got to do it. So we turned up, and I remember it was in there like a conservatory with all these old records and record players. And me and Paul kind of trumbled in there, hungover, having cups of tea. The guy turned up, was interviewing us. And he said, what kind of music are you listening to? So Paul, you know what Paul's like with his record collection. It was like his shoe collection, you know, shoes and records. They started talking about records and music. And the guy wanted to know about music rather than about the band. And so that was right up Paul's street, you know, couldn't stop him. And then he's asking us what we're working on. And we was actually working on the song Rave On. And he said, what's the song called you're working on the EP? And Paul just picked up this Buddy Holly album and went, Rave On from Buddy Holly. And then after that, the guy wrote about it saying, oh, he's called it Rave On because they go to raves. Now, I'm not sure whether that's the first time they were called. They were called all-nighters, and they weren't called raves before then. Whether that was when they started calling them raves, or whether it was a coincidence, but around about that time, it was about Buddy Holly.
Wow. So he just picked a title off a Buddy Holly record just because there was no title to the song, and he just picked...
No, and I knew why, because he didn't want to look like he didn't know what... Because Shaun came up with the titles of the songs, but he didn't want to be caught off guard, like not knowing, you know what I mean? So he was kind of looking, and he had a Buddy Holly, he went, Rave On. And afterwards I said to him, why'd you say that? He said, just, come on, you know, came out, and I don't, you know... But you know what he's like, especially when it comes to music, he'd become very serious when he talks about music, which you want, don't you? The only time, you know, you could laugh and joke about him, and you know, until it was music or shoes or the other thing later on when he became the heroin, when he became, you know. And the first time he did that was we were in Cheetham Hill in New Order's rehearsal room, and they had a kitchen at the back, and he went in the back kitchen to do it. And he didn't hide it for some reason. I walked in and I just said, you dick, what are you doing? And he looked really embarrassed, and he said, I know. And that moment I realised that from then on, the band was on a down, you know, it was you know, beginning of the end.
What kind of period?
You know what, I don't know. I've thought about this. I'm not sure when. It must have been, I think it was, I could be wrong because you get things wrong, don't you? Your mind plays tricks. But I think it was when we was writing songs for Yes Please. So before we went to Barbados.
It would be because it was about a year after Step On came out, I think. So a year after he married Alison, I think. Because it was triggered by, his excuse was that she cheated on him, and that's when he did it. It
was around that time, definitely, yeah. I think it was a combination of things, yeah, but yeah. We got to Barbados and he was really ill with stomach pains and cramps, and they took it, you know, he used to get that with anxiety, didn't he? They couldn't find anything, it was anxiety, but I think it's probably a little bit of missing that as well. I think maybe he just started getting
you know.
And then when he was in Barbados, he got involved in the crack thing as well, presumably. I think he did, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, don't forget the first week we recorded drums, so I wasn't privy to all that the first week. I was stuck in the studio for the week with the percussionists and the producers getting the drum. Then we get the bass in, and I remember said to Paul get the bass in on day 6 to come in, and then so said, he's doing the crap, but he still came in and did it. I remember him not being right and trying to hide it from me.
I could never tell when he'd done crack. Heroin, you can tell a mile off. Like, I could tell from like 100 yards away. There's that glow, isn't that aura, that horrible, nasty.
His mouth changed when he done heroin. He went, remember when that used to go?
Yeah.
His chin would go like that. It looked like I used to say, you got your ventriloquist chin again. I know you've scored. Ventriloquist. It's like, and he would overcompensate, wouldn't he? He would overcompensate.
And he'd smile, and it's the only time he'd ever cleaned the house. Cleaned it like when a normal heroin addict, it kind of slows him. It would speed him up, and he'd be all happy and jolly and cleaning the house. And I never understood. I mean, obviously there were times when he'd gouch out as well, but with crack, I never knew. I could never tell when he'd been doing.
No, he denied it, and I was like, I'm sure only because the others said he had, but I wasn't sure. Yeah, I mean that was the only time I witnessed that. But he was great in the studio there, but he knew we were in denial that the band was ending then, and he knew he wasn't in denial. We were in denial, and he'd accepted it, and I think it was really affecting him there.
What? So he thought the band was ending before Yes Please?
Yeah, I think that's why he decided to do that, to start doing heroin. And when we were in Barbados, I think he knew that it was finishing, whereas we kind of did, but I was in denial.
Why did you think it was finishing before Yes Please?
Well, because we all weren't getting on, and we were, with some parts of the band were writing. We were just writing. We'd all gone off on our own things, writing. People weren't accepting other people. We used to write. Me and Paul and Mark used to jam together and write in PD, and people weren't accepting what other people did, and even me and Paul were not agreeing with each other musically, which was rare. We usually always do, and it just wasn't the same before. We knew. And then there was a couple of people in the band doing heroin, and then it lost being about the music.
What do you put that down to? What do you think the cause of that was? Was it because there'd been big success and no one could handle that, or was it just down to the 2 members of the band doing heroin? Like, what do you think was?
I think it was a bit of everything. I mean, I was drinking more, smoking weed. I had my moments. Mark was. So, we can't blame just heroin. Everyone had gone off on their own thing, but people weren't getting on. I think, the fame thing, the press were turning us against each other a lot. There's a lot of that. We fell for it. I think it was naive for the press in some point.
Tell me about that. I don't know what you mean.
Well, I think they were trying to pitch, there was things where they were saying, like, they'd say, are you resentful because you're not on the cover of the magazine? So we were like, well, no, we're fine. And then they'd say, well, but you're not getting the credit for it. So we weren't. And then they were saying they'd say to Shaun, the rest of the band, PD, they did it a lot with, really. PD wanted to be on the cover, and he didn't, Well, maybe he did, I don't know, he didn't. But they kind of pitted us as though we were bitter, and and I think Shaun saw that as us having an ego. And none of it was true, from both sides. And we were a bit naive to us and Shaun. I think both of us are a bit naive.
When you say the press, are you talking about the tabloid press, the music press, the broadsheet?
All of it. Yeah. And people around us as well. And you get people in your ear, all people around us. Everyone was off doing their own thing a lot of the time. And we weren't spending time together as much like we used to. We were a gang. We were, a 4 or 5-headed monster. And that kind of changed. But it happens all the time, I think there's that kind of northern working class insecurity of thinking, imposter syndrome. We're not good enough for this, so it's going to end any moment. So let's not put too much heart and soul into it, because it's all going to collapse at some point. So I think we all kind of accepted it that it would do, instead of fighting it. And I mean, at the end when we split up, Shaun said we should have just taken a break for 6 months or a year out, and that's probably what we should have done. But the problems were more deep rooted, I think. I had a breakdown, which ended up being malaria tablets that caused it. It ended up in Meadowbrook, where Paul was.
So Meadowbrook's like a psychiatric hospital in Salford, yeah. You weren't there at the same time though, were you?
No, we weren't there at the same time. No, that would have been brilliant, though, wouldn't it, if we were? I was there before and he was there a couple of times afterwards. But it'd been funny if we were there at the same time, wouldn't it? That would have been brilliant. But no, not at the same time, no. But when we went to visit him, they said he's in there. I said, it's all right, I know where he is.
Oh, you did you get there first? Maybe he just was fancy to stay himself, so after he visited you, maybe.
I don't know. It's just, I think me and Paul had suffered from anxiety and depression. But that's the other thing we had in common. We both had depression and anxiety.
Do you think that was caused by your experience being in the band, the highs and the lows? Do you think that triggers mental issues with generally with people? Because it seems to be there's a much higher proportion of successful musicians affected by mental health issues.
No, I think that's why you end up being a musician. Well, it depends. Maybe everyone's different. Mine was caused by the accident I had when I was 11. I never kind of recovered from that. Everything goes back to that. So I think mine goes back further than that. So, but I think maybe so. I don't. It didn't with me. It just doesn't help it. The lifestyle doesn't help. You know, when you've got depression, mental illness, you need stability. You need routine. You don't need a lot of drugs and alcohol. You know, and I remember I've not seen a psychiatrist for years, but it must be about 15 years ago. They said to me, really, he didn't know what work I did, and he said, I said, I think it's my work, and he didn't ask me what my job was, and he said, really, what you need is somewhere, a job where you don't travel a lot, you have a routine, it's not noisy, and you're not around a lot of people. And I said, well, that doesn't help. He said, what's your job? I said, I'm a rock drummer in a band, and he just started laughing, and he went, I can't help you. So I think, so I think there's kind of that. So I think it doesn't help. I think it just makes it worse rather than triggers it. But everyone's different. Maybe it does,
What was the accident you had when you were 11?
I snapped my arm in half, and my bone and my elbow came through. But the problem was, it was just before I started high school, so I missed 6 months of high school. I was in Salford Royal for a few months. But the problem was, I didn't know whether it'd work again. So that they saved me out. Before I went under, they said we might have to amputate. So I remember that going under. And then the doctors came in day after and said, you're going to be in for a long time, but we managed to save the arm. But you might not be able to use it. It's a lot of nerve damage. And I was like, oh, I'll just have an arm, won't be able to use it. And I've been having guitar lessons for 3 years. So I thought, I won't be able to play guitar anymore. And then they came to me and said, you will get the nerves back bit by bit. It took 6 years for the nerves to come back in my fingers. But they said, this is what messed my head up. They said, but your arm might never grow. So I might have this 11-year-old's arm for all my life. So so every day, you're laughing. So every day I'd be like this, checking my arm's growth. So that started my OCD, my anxiety. So literally every day I'd be checking my arm, and...
But it did grow. You were all right.
It's actually stronger than my left arm now. I've had no problem. I have a feeling's not great in it when I'm playing guitar. But yeah, I've had no issues with it. It's really weird.
And amazing that you're a drummer as well.
Well, it doesn't. So that's why I bought a drum kit, because I couldn't play guitar anymore. The irony. So so it's really weird. So yeah.
How had you broken it? What happened that made you break it?
So we had this. They have a park. They have the frames. They have the swings on. But the swings had been ripped off, and there's the bar. We pushed a park bench up to it, so we used to run, jump on the bench and grab hold of it, and I fell backwards, and it snapped and it came through. But years later, when I went to see the doctor, he said, if you hadn't done that, you'd have snapped your spine, so it's probably a good thing anyway. So, so I was lucky, really. But the not growing thing, checking it for all through, my teenage years, was just messed me head up. I think my anxiety was there before, and depression. So me and Paul suffered from depression, so we could relate to that. And I remember... we're talking literally, I remember it was about a week before, it wasn't a week before he died because he'd just come over, but a week before he left, last time I saw him. And I was saying to him, I said, you know what? I said, If I had heroin, because we talk about anxiety and depression, and I said, you know what? I said, if I had it, it'd be game over. I'd never need anything else. It'd be the perfect answer for me. And he said to me, I know, that's why I kept it away from you. You should never have it. It's the perfect drug for you. That's why I kept it. And he used to keep it away from me. I never saw him do it, ever. Apart from that, the first time, I never saw him do it. But it's just unusual because most heroin addicts I know, everyone I've known has said, oh, try some, because they always want an accomplice, always do. But he never did, never. He kept me away from it always. Even his prescription medication, he wouldn't do it in front of me. He took some anxiety tablet recently. I saw, what's that? He went, nothing. And I knew what it was because I saw it in his prescription, his anxiety thing. And he was embarrassed about it with me, and he didn't need to be, but,
That's what happened, really. He got clean when he moved to LA. He got clean, but they put him on a ton of prescription drugs, which there never seemed to be a will to wean him off them. I think he was on 7 or 8 different things, but that the stuff he was taking was still abusable to an extent. It might not have been street drugs, but
I know he exceeded his dosage before a gig because of anxiety. When he come over to England, because he used to give him anxiety, and he'd say that to me. I'd say, "You're not looking right." He went, I've just had a little bit more than you should have because I've, and I knew he'd be getting anxious, And
I felt like he was never really able to get properly clean and grow and be that person that he could have become. He was always struggling.
He's always in my heart. When he was younger, I really looked up to him. He was a couple of years older than me. I could relate to him, and I really looked up to him in lots of ways. And he was, before he started doing that, I know this is hard to believe, but he was actually quite lively. he was. Don't get me wrong, he was never swift of foot. You know what I mean? But he was quite lively and and talkative and quick and funny and he was my hero. I'm not just saying that. He was, and he was, and he was me growing up. He was the one because he was funny. He was smart. I was well dressed. We got on. We had the same sense of humour. We loved music. He taught me about music. That 2 years is a lot when you're 16 and 18. But we always, and he never, ever judged me, ever. We had a few fallings out a few times, just silly. That was caused through other things, but we...
What were the names that you had for him? That you've mentioned Omar Sharif. What are the...
Omar, Alf Roberts, Snorbits. His best nickname wasn't even a name, it was a bass line. So we'd if we'd walk down the streets and we'd see some animated version of him, someone loosely overweight, with dark hair, dark skin and a big nose, I'd just go ding, 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 ding. One of his early bass lines was ding, 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 ding. I think the song was called Weekend Starts Here or something. We started with the bass line, and Paul used to do it, so we'd hear or see something, and we'd just go ding, 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 ding. And even now, see, he's not alive anymore. We'd be walking down the street and something had happened, and Paul would just go ding, 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 ding. Putting how we put my voice on. He'd go ding, 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 and that was it. He had a nickname that wasn't even a name. It was a bass line.
I know there was Myra Hindley.
He used to call me Lily Savage, man. He used to call me Les Dennis. He used to call me all sorts. Oh, he had all sorts of me. Usually Quagmire. He called me Quagmire for years. I didn't know what it was until I saw Family Guy, and I was like, yeah. We had, I can't remember. We had loads of nicknames. The nicknames would change all the time.
That's it for this week. We're playing out with the track that Gaz mentioned earlier, which is something that he did with his French collaborator in LA, Eddie Gronfier. This track is called The Guns of Flixton, and it's not a finished track. This is just the instrumental, and Paul would probably kill me for actually letting you hear this in its unfinished form.
but hopefully you won't mind. But maybe it'll get finished by somebody else at some point in the future, but have a listen. We got some more Q&A Zooms coming up, so if you'd like to join in with one or more, please do join our Patrons Club by going to patreon.com/the Paul Ryder Tapes and sign up there. We're really, really grateful to our amazing patrons for helping us to bring these episodes to you each week. We really wouldn't be able to do it without you, so big, big thanks to all of you. Website for anyone who needs information is paulryder.tv. Have a fantastic week. We're going to be back again next week, same time, same place, with yet another special bonus edition. And it's a really, really good one next week, so don't miss it. Big thanks to the legendary Gaz Whelan and, of course, as usual, big ups to the man himself, to the late, great Paul Anthony Ryder. See you next week. Lots of love. Bye.
Glistening Productions.